So, wir hatten da, glaube ich, ein kleines technisches Problem. Jetzt soll das aufgehoben sein. Ich bin wieder zurück. Entschuldige mich dafür. Kann passieren. Genau, dann machen wir es so. Dann gucken wir uns das an und gehen schon mal weiter in das Video.
Russian forces.
Also ich stoße mal das Video kurz neu starten für die Leute, die jetzt gerade neu dazukommen. Und dann schauen wir uns das zusammen an.
Hey, Spare Parts Army, I have a brief statement. This will be my last or second to last episode for Task and Purpose because I'm leaving my role as head of video at the end of this week. For 6 years, I've called our community that we've built here together Spare Parts. It's a phrase that's deeply personal to my life. That was my squad's nickname when I was deployed to Iraq. We were made up of backfills, reclassed, and stop-lost guys. And I used it here to describe us because our community is not necessarily the special forces or geopolitical experts. We're your regular prior service veterans. We're your civilian enthusiasts. We're people who are secretly military curious and people who have my kind of tism. But I think we're all united by our shared love for learning about the world. To learn what's next for our community and for my team, to find out why we're leaving and where we're going, you have to follow me on Instagram or Twitter at Cappy Army for the announcement soon. Follow me on Instagram or Twitter at Cappy Army if you want to reach me with any questions at all. I'm not sure what the company Task and Purpose is doing next on here or who they'll replace this average infantryman with, but I hope you continue to watch their new team's content too, because even though I'm leaving as the head of video, I'm grateful for the opportunity that they gave me to grow this channel from nothing to you, the 2 million subscribers, the Spare Parts Army, who've changed my life and given me this opportunity. Now, on with the episode. In a dramatic shift, Russian forces have recaptured most of Ukraine-occupied Kursk in a massive offensive campaign.
Also, was ihr hier seht, rot ist, wo die Ukrainer mal vorgestoßen waren, orange ist umkämpft und grün ist noch besetzt von den Ukrainern.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces have conducted another incursion into Russian territory in Belgorod. The new incursion is smaller and appears to be designed to open up more areas in what looks like an attempt to prevent Russia from continuing their push into Sumy region after Kursk. What can we learn from the 3 main tactics Russia used to recapture Kursk? And what might this mean for the broader war effort? The first way Russia went about recapturing Kursk was by using Spetsnaz forces that struck at key Ukrainian command and control nodes on March 8th. Russian mill blogger 2 Majors that you've probably heard of before, he shared video footage from one of
Und das ist noch vielleicht interessant für euch zu sehen, wo halt da viel Diskussion gekommen ist, sind die Ukraine eingekreist oder sind sie nicht eingekreist. Tatsache war einfach, dass ein paar einzelne Einheiten da geschafft haben durchzukommen und einen Konvoi, wo von den Ukrainern da durchgefahren ist, abzufangen und Hinterhalt zu legen. Und deswegen hat man gemeint gehabt, dass so ein paar Leute haben da gemeint gehabt, dass die Ukraine komplett eingekreist waren, aber das war nur ein kleiner Teil.
On March 8th.
Es war eher ein Clash als eine Einkreisung.
Russian mill blogger 2 Majors that you've probably heard of before, he shared video footage from one of these teams codenamed Shadow, destroying a comms antenna with a drone. 2 Majors commented that
was interessant war, er war in Kursk, er war von 3 Monaten in Kursk und hat dort damals Interviews vor Ort gemacht gehabt mit Einheimischen, mit Soldaten und so weiter, und der hat da halt ganz interessante Videos gemacht gehabt, wo wir da auch einiges daraus ziehen können.
The sabotage teams had also blown up bridges in the area to slow down Ukrainian troops and supply movements. When the Spetsnaz teams were forward deployed, they started feeding reconnaissance intelligence reports back to their commanders. This meant that Russian forces knew key information about upcoming Ukrainian troop movements and rotations, because when the guys rotate, when they infiltrate and exfiltrate from the positions, they're at their most vulnerable, which is why they keep that information secret. Russia was able to time their attack for when Ukraine was most exposed. On a personal note, when I traveled there last year, to be fully transparent with you, I made friends with many of the Ukrainian infantrymen who are fighting there, like Oleksiy, the Bradley commander, and I can't help but feel awful for what they're fighting through right now. I would feel like I was...
Das ist cool.
Leaving something
Können wir alle zusammen anfangen.
out if I didn't acknowledge that this report on a personal level is difficult for me to cover because I hope those guys made it out okay. Next, Russian soldiers used quad bikes to quickly move over the terrain. Even though it's a dangerous mode of transport, it does have its advantages. It gave them the ability to exploit openings in a lightning-fast attack. To that point, a Ukrainian commander told the New York Post that around 10 of these Russian ATVs broke through the lines in 3 separate sectors. Quote, behind those positions, the land was empty and undefended, so they made a swift raid, covered by artillery and drones from the rear, and cut that part off. End quote. This is when the siege of the key town of Suja began. Conventional Russian grunt.
Und das muss man auch sagen. Also diese Motorräder, meistens hat man hier eher rumliegende Motorräder gesehen, muss man sagen, und niemals den von Rädern nehmen. Der Punkt ist, dass diese Motorräder meistens verwendet geworden sind, um wirklich schnell ein Feld zu passieren, weil heute ist ein Panzer halt eine Massierung hier von Soldaten, und wenn eine FPV-Drohne sowieso diesen ganzen Panzer in die Luft jagt, dann ist es teilweise schlauer, wirklich den Motorräder zu geben und das mehr zu defizieren. Also du erwischst vielleicht 2, 3, aber du erwischst nicht alle. Und das ist genau das Gefährliche von dieser Taktik. Man kann es ungefähr vergleichen, vielleicht historisch, mit Mongolenreiterei, wo sie halt immer Hit-and-Run-Angriffe gemacht haben, und wenn du hinterher gerannt bist, haben sie dich dann noch gejagt. Und es waren halt, die waren so schnell, dass du nicht hinterhergekommen bist.
Were sent in and advised, supported.
Ein bisschen weit hergeholt von der Historie, aber ich glaube, es ist ein bisschen die vergleichbarste Taktik.
By VDV paratroopers. Ukrainian drone operator Craig Froscher, who's actually on the ground in Kursk, said on X in his report that he'd only seen a few Russian tanks in the past 4 months, but by January he was suddenly seeing BMP-3s and T-80 tanks attacking Ukrainian positions day and night. Trust me, my ears are still ringing from the intensity of the artillery fire when I was in Kursk, which is good because it helps drown out the voices in my head. By March 12th, Kriegs identified a massive surge in elite forces that he'd never observed the Russian deploy before. These are the sorts of units that have been spearheading assaults in high-priority sectors in face of heavy losses. And talking about losses on both sides in this battle is nothing to make light of. We're talking about a seriously staggering casualty scale here. I feel it's cliche of me at this point, but I think it's also important to remind myself that each of these people who are dying are someone's son and daughter.
Und das will ich auch sagen. Das sind Menschen, wo sterben am Ende des Tages.
Since I found out that I'm going to be a father, that framing has impacted me more. When you see how much people sacrifice trying to have children and how much they give to their kids, I cannot imagine anything worse than losing a child to war. The Russian military then deployed an unorthodox tactic. They shut off an underground natural gas pipe.
Er war von 3 Monaten, muss mal gucken. Er hat da wirklich einen ganz guten Bericht dazu gemacht. Und auch er hat Interviews mit Einheimischen geführt gehabt und allgemein mit Soldaten vor Ort. Natürlich auf der ukrainischen Seite, aber halt trotzdem sehr spannend.
Pipeline that.
Und es gibt nicht viele Journalisten, die das gemacht haben, weil die Russen haben gedroht gehabt, wenn Journalisten sich dort gehen, werden sie gejagt und teilweise solche Sachen.
Ran through Suja, through Russia into Ukraine. Several days prior to the assault, over 100 Russian soldiers from various different units, including the Akhmet Special Forces unit, walked hunched over for 15 kilometers through inside of a pipeline, carrying supplies on carts, waiting up to 6 days at the end of that tunnel for the right moment to pop out of the pipe in Suja behind Ukrainian lines.
Und er hat mir auch ein bisschen inspiriert, selber auch in die Ukraine zu gehen und solche Interviews zu führen, weil das ist genau das Interessanteste, was du haben kannst. Aufnahmen direkt von den Leuten vor Ort, wo halt weniger Journalisten und Leute von höheren Rängen was erzählen, sondern die Menschen selber, wo die Geschichte erzählen.
Lines in the industrial zone there. In some of the photos and videos that I saw Russian troops released, it appeared to be that they were wearing blue armbands. The purpose of this.
Und das wäre theoretisch ein Kriegsverbrechen, sowas zu machen. Dass man sich als Kontrahent, also dass man sich als Feind ausgibt und dem Gegner dann in den Rücken schießt.
This was likely to deceive Ukrainian soldiers into thinking they were friendlies. Reports indicate on March 8th, a number of Russian troops exited the pipeline and a major firefight broke out. behind Ukrainian lines. It could have caught the Ukrainian troops by surprise, and some suggest this is what led to a reversal on the battlefield. Russia
Aber das ist noch ein Witz, was sonst gemacht wird.
likely used
Kann man auch unter Kriegslist unterstufen.
Soviet archive maps that they had to know how to get through the pipelines, how to navigate them, and use them to their advantage. This is the second time we've seen Russian forces use this tactic. Last time they went through a water or a pipeline in Avdiivka, where it reportedly worked. The major
Wenn du von der Ahmed-Einheit redest, das sind meistens eher TikTok-Soldiers. Haben sie ein bisschen einen Spitznamen gekriegt gehabt, die militärischen Blogger, weil sie halt gerne Videos machen und sich zeigen, wie sie an vorderster Front kämpfen, aber halt meistens sind die ziemlich gedreht, diese Videos. Aber was man genau sieht, ist zum Beispiel, das waren jetzt eher die Spetsnaz. Die Spetsnaz, also das sind allgemein die Spezialeinheiten, die haben wirklich halt infiltriert und sind hinter den ukrainischen Linien gelangt. Das ist auch eine Aufgabe von der Spezialeinheit.
Your advantage here, of course, is that
Also von der Ahmed halte ich jetzt nicht so viel, aber sonst von der Spezialeinheit, das sind natürlich motivierte Leute, die ganz für ihr Land. Egal, ob man jetzt die Politik gut findet oder nicht, aber trotzdem Respekt, dass jemand in solchen Einheiten dient.
under the pipes, as narrow and unprotected as you are, you're not going to be spotted by those attack drones overhead. There are dozens of pipes exiting all over the place here, so it's difficult to cover down on them all. The thing that absolutely blew me away was a photo of one of the soldiers smoking a
Da habe ich auch gelacht gehabt, wo ich das gesehen habe, Alter. Was hat er? Eine Gaspleitleine, eine Zigarette anzünden?
cigarette in the turned off gas pipeline.
Theoretisch ja, praktisch nein, es ist mehr so eine Privateinheit.
The results of this gas pipeline tactic are uncertain. Russian sources say it was a complete success, while Ukrainian sources say that they caught the plan in time, laid a trap, eliminated 80% of the Russians that emerged. When we follow developing situations like this, it's impossible for me to say for certain. We will know when it clears up one day, though. A gas pump station here was later blown up, with again each side accusing the other of being behind the attack. But before we get into that, the only way this video is possible is thanks to Odoo. Odoo prides itself on the motto, unity makes creative strength. And through its robust, seemingly never-ending suite of business management applications, its ability to unite with my creative workflow, for one, has proven to strengthen pretty much every aspect of my day-to-day operations. And today, I want to focus mainly on my favorite part of the platform, and what I think really did
Gehen wir ein bisschen nach vorne.
in the turn of fate for Kursk was when Russia deployed their Rubicon Center of Advanced Unmanned Systems to the Kursk region in early March. When I first heard that, I thought it sounded like a university or a think tank or something. But Rubicon Center is one of the most experienced and feared drone groups in the Russian military. Usually they're just called Rubicon by the Ukrainians. This drone unit is still shrouded in mystery. No one knows exactly how big it is, or even if it's a single unit or a network of semi-independent task forces. Rubicon was reported by Ukrainian sources to have an immediate
Sie haben halt sehr viele dieser Glasfaserdrohnen und die kannst du halt mit einem Jammer gar nichts ausrichten. Die fliegen ganz klar zu ihrem Ziel.
immediate impact on the battlefield. Their swarms of FPV drones are controlled by fiber optic cables instead of radio signals.
Und das ist die Kritik, sagt man, diese Drohnen seien teuer, aber ganz ehrlich, 5.000 für einen Panzer, wo du kannst Potenzial damit zerstören, ist nix, weil ein Javelin damals hat 80.000 gekostet pro Schuss.
So they're immune to electronic jammers that both sides have used to protect themselves. The Ukrainian Bradley team that I spoke to in November 2024 said that this was just when they started to face these new types of drones, but then fast forward to March 2025, and by then Russia had manufactured more and they were widely commonplace. Russia had been able to produce them at scale, which was something that they hadn't got a hang of yet in the past. Even though those spools of fiber optic cables do have a debuff, it makes the drones heavier and less maneuverable than radio-controlled versions. The jam-proof design is widely said to be worth that trade-off. One of the drones recovered by Ukrainian troops had a spool with over 10 kilometers of fiber optic cable to give you an idea of just how far they fly. The Rubicon unit joined the Russian assault of Basivka to the northwest of Suja. Once taking the upper part of that town, the Russians advanced further and they were blocked at a river but this new vantage point allowed the Rubicon unit to range in and hit that vital supply line of the H07 R200 highway, the one that I've told you about, the only way in and out of Russia.
Und ich war auch in der Waffenmesse und habe mit einigen Leuten drüber geredet, so gegen die Glasfaserdrohnen selber. Also außen physische Einwirkungen gibt es sonst da noch keine Antwort drauf, wie man das elektronisch abschneiden kann, weil natürlich das mit einem Kabel verbunden ist. Und das macht es natürlich sehr schwer.
The way ground operations play out in this war is often when the enemy gets within drone striking distance of your supply lines, it's only a matter of time before withdrawal is necessary. One open source analyst, Andrew Perpetua, said on X, Rubicon often targets short distances of roads, 100 to 300 meters long, and they just saturate that area with drones. Attacks are frequently carried out in groups, sometimes hitting the front, back, and sides of a vehicle almost simultaneously. This approach has also been used to hit multiple vehicles in a convoy at once, compounding the damage. They also set traps by landing drones on roads and detonating them underneath passing vehicles, functioning like anti-tank mines, likely using upward-facing shaped charges, end quote. So what happened here was there were aerial roadblocks that strangled the only major supply route in and out of Suja. That route was already a road that was blown to pieces, I saw, but Rubicon destroyed the vehicles and slowed the traffic even further. Ukraine's drivers were forced to move only at night and dodge the wrecks of previous drone targets.
Und das ist der Punkt auch allgemein. So, natürlich heute haben wir wieder Jammer gehabt, aber jetzt gibt es wieder die Glasfaserdrohnen, wo ein bisschen, glaube ich, wieder eine Antwort auf diese Jammer sind. Ja, also Nacht ist immer noch aktuell die sicherste Bewegungsform, weil du nimmst halt sollst ein Nachtsichtgerät haben als Fahrer, schaltest nicht die Lichter an, fährst halt so durch die Nacht.
One soldier said, quote, "We have all the logistics here on one Suja Sum."
Weil in der Kriegsführung siehst du immer so, wenn die neue Technologie sich etabliert und beide Seiten versuchen immer natürlich das Beste rauszufinden, da gibt es immer so ein Abwechseln, wir haben eine Gegenmaßnahme dagegen, und dann gibt es wieder einen neuen Gegenschlag und einen Gegenschlag, also eine Weiterentwicklung der Technik. Und das merkt man hier komplett.
Highway, and everyone knew that the Russians would try to cut it. But this again came as a surprise to our command, end quote.
Definitiv, das ist, glaube ich, die einzige Möglichkeit, ja.
I've said in the past that I try to be unbiased in these reports, but that's not really accurate. Of course I'm biased because I'm passionate about and I care about all the topics I choose to cover on this channel.
Das sind die zwei Drähte vorne dran, sind so wie zwei Kontakte. Wenn diese zwei Kontakte sich berühren, dann detoniert die Ladung. Und das ist halt genau der Punkt. Wenn diese Ladung sich jetzt schon würde in die Luft berühren, dann explodiert die Drohne einfach in der Luft. Das sind halt wirklich halt so diese zwei Kontakte, die müssen sich berühren und dann explodieren sie. Vielleicht wäre eine Idee so eine Schallkanone, weil die wird diese Kontakte natürlich ein bisschen zum Berühren bringen, aber vielleicht weit weggeholt. Ich denke, das effektivste sind Schrotpatronen, wo halt genau auf das entwickelt sind.
However, I do try to stay objective when reporting the facts, though this is a tough one to talk about. What we know for sure is that when the Ukrainian retreat happened next, the BBC reporters spoke directly with Ukrainian soldiers about their withdrawal from Kursk. All the soldiers widely stated that they had to quickly abandon armored vehicles and artillery pieces in the spot that they were in order to safely make it out of there. Metal and hardware can be replaced, but some of Ukraine's best soldiers cannot. Russian news outlets are now...
Das ist der Punkt. Fahrzeuge kann man auswechseln und ersetzen, aber gutes trainierte Soldaten, es dauert ein paar Jahre, bis man die wieder hat.
Posting videos of captured Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, M1 Abrams battle tanks, and are abandoned in place. The reason equipment is left behind like this is because once that main supply route in and out of the territory comes under the control of enemy fire, if you start a vehicle up, it gives off a big heat signature and becomes an instant target. You're not making it out of there in a vehicle. You can no longer leave on road. So many of the soldiers reported to the BBC that they left Kursk on foot.
Also haben halt viele Sachen dort gelassen, um wirklich halt Sicherheit zu sein, weil das Problem ist natürlich in der Straße, wenn die ganzen Drohnen die Luftüberlegenheit haben, dann kommst du da schwer raus.
Walking dozens of miles to get back to Ukrainian territory, and they were under constant artillery and drone attack while they did this. These are the facts on the ground that we cannot ignore, like it or not. The conflict map reveals Russian air and artillery are now pounding the only supply route into and out of the border. Now, traveling that stretch of road was probably the most terrifying thing I've done in my life. You're just holding your breath without even realizing it, and Ukrainian soldiers had to do that.
Ich denke, der Panzer hat trotzdem schon noch seine Daseinsberechtigung, aber ich denke, der Panzer mit der ganz großen Kanone ist halt sicher wird weniger im Einsatz sein wie anders. Also natürlich vielleicht ein schwer gepanzertes Fahrzeug brauchst du schon noch, aber ich denke, die schwere Kanone kannst du bald mit ein paar andere Sachen ersetzen. Besonders heutzutage hast du halt billigere Mittel, um auch einen Panzer auszuschalten. Und da muss man vielleicht mal gucken, was man sonst machen kann.
Trip all the time. So this reversal of fortunes.
Weil eine Kanone ist auch schwer, da kann ich, wenn ich die Kanone weglasse, auch vielleicht eine schwerere Panzerung machen.
Started a few weeks into February. Because of the timing, though, it's hard to not draw a line between the United States' brief pause of intelligence sharing with Ukraine with these events. Ukrainian intelligence allowed them to see Russian troop movements, staging areas where they were going to be, so Ukraine was blind to attack. They also were
Ja, und das war genau eine entscheidende Phase, wo die Amerikaner ihre Sachen abgeschalten haben, teilweise auf ihre Art sabotiert haben. Und das merkt man, wie gut man den Amerikanern da vertrauen kann. Und auch wenn man gestern das Rekrutierungsvideo von denen gesehen hat, wo ich da gezeigt habe, dann überlegt man sich langsam, welche Seite die Amerikaner wirklich stehen. Also die Regierung. Die Amerikaner selber sind schon auch westlich, viele, aber die Regierung selbst, die ist fragwürdig.
To use HIMARS strikes during this window. A Ukrainian officer told Time magazine that operations in Kursk felt the impact the most. Quote, as a result of the pause, there are hundreds of dead Ukrainians. It's really
Interessant.
Causing an advantage for the enemy on the front line, end quote. The first time that the North Koreans faced off against Ukrainian forces, they were initially not effective, and then the North Koreans pulled back and they had to reassess their tactics. Of the 10,000 North Koreans originally sent, they'd suffered nearly 30% casualties, according to NIS, which is a South Korean intelligence agency. Similar numbers are reported by Ukraine. Meanwhile, official Russian and North Korean statements say that they don't even have any North Koreans near combat at all. But Ukrainian sources say that North Korean troops came back in a second wave and that they had learned a lot from their initial attacks. One soldier said, quote, the North Koreans...
Und das ist also, die erste Welle hat Theorie gelernt und die zweite Welle kommt dann mit Praxis.
Application of tactics is constantly improving. They're working in better coordination with North Korean artillery units and supported by Russian drone operators. The North Koreans have been particularly effective on the southern axis of Suja, where they've been used as the main assault force to charge the overstretched Ukrainian line. They just sweep us away, advancing in groups of 50 North Koreans, while we only have 6 men on our positions, end quote. This was something that Western analysts were paying close attention to, whether or not North Korean troops would be able to apply the lessons learned, or if their command structure was too rigid to allow it. So
Hello, Alexei.
There is some intelligence that's being gleaned from this. If we look at the live conflict map, we can see that Ukrainian troops have since fallen back mostly to the border. Russian forces surged during this time period from 38,000 that were originally there to an estimated 70,000 today, who are fighting alongside a contingent of 12,000 North Korean reinforcements that have been widely reported on. They used this foothold in hostile territory, surrounded on 3 sides, and outnumbered by 3-1 for much of the fight. And now they seem to be... By mid-March, if Ukraine tried to hold on to Sudzha any longer, they risked running out of supplies and being completely overrun. On March 16th, the Ukrainian General Staff confirmed that they'd given the order to pull out of Sudzha and fall back to a more defensible position, though geolocated footage from Russian troops show that the pullout likely happened sometime around March 11th. The big question is if Russia will continue their press into Sumy next. When I was there on the ground, I saw the new battle lines were being drawn up on that route. I saw Ukraine had placed hundreds of kilometers of long barbed wire.
Und das ist jetzt genau der interessanteste Punkt von diesem ganzen Video er macht, weil er war von dort und er berichtet hat von verschiedenen Stellungen, wo er schon vorbereitet ist.
Air Dragon's Teeth trenches, pillboxes on elevated positions throughout Sumy, every couple of hundred of meters. Whether those defensive fortifications will hold up now or not, we will Whether those defensive fortifications will be enough to deter a movement through here or not, we will have to wait and see. As these territorial changes happen on the ground, they've made their way to the higher level ceasefire negotiations. Conditions on the ground often reflect the larger geopolitics. Putin claimed that thousands of Ukrainian soldiers in Suja had been fully encircled, and he urged them to surrender or die. Counterclaims by Ukrainian Ministry of Defense dispute that and assert that the troops are not encircled. Some Ukrainian sources believe that Ukrainian forces withdrew with a lot of their combat power intact, while others believe it was a full rout with lots of equipment lost, which will have an operational impact on their ability to reconstitute and fight elsewhere, although the new reports of their incursion to Belgorod seem to suggest they still have offensive power. Zelensky stated that he launched the operation into Kursk Oblast to create a buffer zone against future attacks into Sumy. But it's also a consensus among Western think tanks and military analysts that a second goal was to hold Russian territory as a bargaining chip during future peace negotiations. We'll have to see if Ukraine holds on to any Russian territory when it comes time for a peace deal. We'll have to see how much political pressure is on Putin. Some have argued the attack was initially just a diversionary move or a morale boost that ended up working better than they expected. There were rumors I heard from speaking to intelligence guys in Ukraine that they didn't fully anticipate their initial success in Kursk and that it just opened up new options for them as it happened. Others argue Kursk incursion was a waste of the best trained and equipped Ukrainian troops that could have slowed advances elsewhere. Much of the front line has largely been a stalemate for the past year. One of my favorite YouTube channels, Perron, actually calculated out that if a snail had started in eastern Ukraine at the same time as the full-scale invasion, the snail would have reached Poland by now. Relatively speaking, it's been a deadlock, so anytime there's any kind of change on the ground, it's worth looking at. I'm your average infantryman, Chris Cappy, signing off this net for either the last time or the second to last time, but I'll be leaving at the end of this week. Be sure to follow me on Instagram or Twitter at CappyArmy. This is going to be one of my last episodes as the head of video for Task and Purpose.
Das ist sehr interessant. Das ist sein letztes Video oder einer von seinen letzten. Ich würde das auch noch für euch prüfen, was er genau macht, weil er ist ein großes Vorbild eigentlich gewesen für mich, also immer noch. Und ich habe viel Inspiration durch sein Engagement gesehen. Ironische ist, dass gerade mein Kanal zur Monetarisierung langsam dasteht und seine hört auf. Das ist schon eine krasse Sache.
Well, my friends, right away we have some awesome news coming from the front lines and to be...
Und das ist jetzt so ein bisschen gerade, es baut auf, wo er ungefähr aufhört mit seinem Lagebericht, weil gestern wurde jetzt noch ein paar Vorstöße gemeldet. Also da haben sie auch einen kleinen Gegenangriff gemacht, der ist schon ein paar Tage bekannt, Richtung Belgrad, und das ist jetzt gerade was neu dazugekommen ist.
More particular from the Russian territory of the Belgorod Oblast. There Ukraine expands the bridge had taken at least 2 of the villages. They broke through the Russian defense and the Russian border.
So durchgebrochen wahrscheinlich noch nicht, aber wenn sie ungefähr da ankommen, Rabovka, dann glaube ich.
Control units were just forced to leave their positions in this vast, I would say,
aber sie haben einen guten Schritt gemacht.
Area. Well, guys, I didn't expect this fast move from Ukrainian army for the last couple of days. Well, the operation in Belgrade itself started roughly 1 week ago, and from the very beginning, it wasn't that successful for Ukraine. Ukraine lost several of the units and infantry forces. And I shared that info with you here on this channel because I try to share just truthful and confirmed information. And now I say this actually huge success. I take the information from the Myko's Santos 3. He has his own Twitter. I'll put the link for it in the video description below. Also, he publishes all of the updates on his the real evidence of the presence of the Ukrainian army. It was located with coordinates.
Das ist genau, was ich gerne sehe, wenn besonders das machen diese YouTuber gut, dann ist es da sehr gut und er zeigt immer halt Bestätigungen, wenn sie irgendwo gesichtet sind.
Geolocated, so the information about the case has been collected using evidence and the reports mostly coming from the Russian side. Ukraine is more or less calm with its offensive to Belgrade. Ukrainian officials want to make the informational field silent, at least for now. As it was, for example, with the Kursk operation. Let's go back to this map and you can see that Russia tries to also target Ukrainian positions here. We may judge that there is the exchange of the fire and maybe Ukraine is not controlling this street, but
deswegen werden solche Gebiete immer als umkämpft gezeichnet, weil ja Das ist natürlich immer noch sehr schwierig zu lokalisieren, aber das haben sie unter Kontrolle.
It's already in a gray zone, and Russian infantry is probably hiding somewhere here in this wood spot. But what is also interesting that Russia has some of the losses, and we have the confirmation about it. Yep, it was the FPV drone. As usual, we have the confirmation that Russia lost at least one tank in this direction. But obviously attacking side usually has more losses, so Ukraine 1 week ago had losses, lots of the vehicles plus engineering equipment, but that equipment helped Ukraine to push out the Russian Dragon Ts or other defense, and now Ukraine may go in with more forces. And you can see, my friends, that Ukraine uses some of the missiles to hit the Russian infrastructure. And it is happening really far away from the front lines. Mostly Ukraine hits the Russian communication facilities, like for example, this bridge was ruined, which Russia could use to send the reinforcements. Well, the idea actually for Ukraine is to cause Russia.
Der Punkt ist, dass sie, glaube ich, eher damit die Russen von Sumi weglocken wollen und dass sie wahrscheinlich die Truppen wieder unten sich konzentrieren, weil sie wieder die russische Grenze passiert haben.
To send the reinforcements to Belgrade from the Kursk region. Well, at least I see it like that. This is the border between Belgrade and Kursk regions, and here you can see the Kursk operation is very close to the place where Ukraine started one more offensive. And guys, in this part of the video, which is very, very important for me because Ground News is the sponsor of my channel, consistent and very supportive to the job that I do, so I can continue my updates with your support, with their support, but nevertheless, this product is just awesome. Every morning I check the information coming from the Ground News, which is very relevant. Subscribe for the Ground News using my personal link, it's ground.news/Dennis. So breaking news, what is happening in the world, and
Good, Ground News kennen wir alle. Das tun wir ein bisschen kurz überspringen. Und
Ground News using my personal link job that I do here on my YouTube channel. Ground News, thank you so much for sponsoring this video. And now let's go back to our military map. So here, if we click on this link.
Der Punkt ist, das war eigentlich der Punkt, es wurden dann noch, viel ich weiß, 4 Helikopter wurden gemeldet, wo zerstört worden sind am Boden. 2 K-52 und 2 Mi-8 wurden dort zerstört bei diesem HIMARS-Angriff. Das war sehr effektiv. Ich tue es mal ein bisschen euch zusammenfassen, dass wir ein bisschen vorwärts machen, weil wir haben noch einiges zu gucken. Genau, da gab es auch noch einen kleinen Gegenangriff. Das ist ja Trojetsk und da haben die Ukrainer die Russen auch nochmal zurückgedrückt. Das ist da auch heute ein Geländegewinn von der ukrainischen Seite, wo passiert ist. Da haben eine Su-25 ist abgestürzt, aber das ist im Osten von Russland gewesen, also die Ukraine hat nichts damit zu tun, das war einfach ein Unfall. Dann haben wir da noch, das sind noch allgemein Sachen vom Weißen Haus. Das ist noch über den Politiker, wo früher sehr der Ukraine geholfen hat und jetzt komplett anders redet. Ja. Kann man sehen, wie man will. Aber das ist ein bisschen so die Tatsache, ja, können wir uns vielleicht angucken. Ist doch interessant, wie das Weiße Haus denkt.
Yes, it's kind of shame to see, for example, Rubio, who is professional, but he fell on his knees in front of the king. And let's listen to what he's saying.
Debt of gratitude, and the world really, because I mean you're the only leader in the planet that can bring the two sides together to bring an end to this conflict, and that's what you've done, and you've done it despite impediments from other countries and others who maybe have different opinions about how this should go, but ultimately I think that the only chance we have for peace is through the president's leadership, and you've shown that, and we hope it'll bear fruit, and today will hopefully be one.
Here he speaks about Russian-Ukrainian negotiations, and he praised Trump for everything. You are the leader of the world. Only you may save it, Donald, my Donald. And Donald Trump is listening from his pride from above. So yeah, very, very sad for you, Rubio. I didn't expect that, but it's the common vector of the Trump's dream team. They're looking... I cannot say that on YouTube.
Asche lecker.
But they're praising Trump more than Putin's team, actually. Trump, Trump, Trump. Our God. You can hear.
Das ist noch, und das ist auch noch ein interessanter Beitrag, wo er gezeigt hat, das will ich euch auch noch schnell zeigen.
That is what President Trump is going to do because he doesn't care about it's not doing its job.
Way for him to make business as usual with Russia. If Russia occupies Ukrainian territories, it should be enough as well.
Denmark, which controls Greenland, it's not doing its job and it's not being a good ally. So you have to ask yourself, how are we going to solve that problem, solve our own national security? If that means that we need to take more territorial interest in Greenland, that is what President Trump is going to do, because he doesn't care about what the Europeans scream at us. He cares about putting the interests of America's citizens first.
Greenland. It was nothing said about Greenland during the election campaign of Donald Trump, and now they're really...
Und das wird natürlich auch noch ein Punkt sein, wo uns Europäer interessieren soll, wenn die Amerikaner plötzlich sagen, sie wollen Grönland einnehmen oder für sich integrieren. Ja, die Welt wird heißer und man muss wachsamer werden und vorbereiteter.
want to annex it. By the way, there is an upcoming unofficial visit of the
Weil, falls das los soll gehen, dann ist es scheißegal, was deine politische Meinung ist, man wird dich zwängen.
United States delegation to Greenland, including Vance's wife, Usha Vance, plus the White House National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and Secretary of Energy Chris Wright. Yeah, definitely unofficial visit, the aim of which is probably to tell to the local Greenland authorities that United States is oriented on annexation in any of the case. Donald Trump just doesn't want to use military power, but if he needs, he would use it. He already said about it openly, and here I trust Donald Trump. In that possible case, the difference between Putin and Trump would be probably just hair and the language they speak. Well, it seems like after all, the military intervention to Greenland is the second option for Donald Trump. The first step is definitely to convince or bribe Greenland authorities to proclaim independence. The idea is similar to what Putin had done in Crimea.
Und ist ursprünglich aus der Krim, also redet da von Erfahrung.
Firstly, this peninsula proclaimed its independence, yes, with intervention of the military, and only after it there was an illegal referendum announced to join the Russian Federation, which Russia just used to annex Ukrainian territory. So Usha Svan's visit is the variant number one now. If it is not successful, Trump will send his army. And guys, I'm 100% sure about it. But in that case, we may write off NATO completely, or it will become just a local European security alliance. And because the United States starts to behave like Russia, countries are looking for solutions to secure themselves. And the only solution without America protecting many of its allies is to obtain nuclear weaponry. The Financial Times.
Und das hat ein bisschen, kann man sagen, Trump erreicht. Jetzt natürlich muss jedes Land, wo, sagen wir, einigermaßen in Ruhe haben will, nukleare Waffen haben.
Article came out with.
Und das ist dann viel höher die Wahrscheinlichkeit, dass das in die Hose gehen kann.
That Trump steers fears of a new nuclear arms race, telling that potential nuclear club may rise up to 20 countries. Well, in that case, I think that Ukraine should be one of those countries, because for Ukraine it's the most crucial. But in general, if we speak about uncontrolled nuclear weaponry expansion, that might lead 100% it will lead to the Third World War, where countries will use nukes against each other. Well, maybe tactical nukes from the start, but if there is a big war between, for example, United States, China and Russia, that might really destroy the world we live in. Well, no one knows by 100% if we survive in that case, but if we survive, it would be a different life like...
Ja, dann haben wir After oder Walking Dead Zustände. Dann ist es auch trotzdem wichtig, falls man überlebt hat, militärisches Wissen zu haben. Weil dann geht es darum, wieder neue Communities aufzubauen und alles wieder bei Null anzufangen.
Like from Mad Max style or something like that. Yeah, the steps of Donald Trump's administration are just crazy. And guys, this video is already
Für alle da, hoffe es geht dir gut.
kind of long, so tomorrow I'm gonna update you with more information coming about Ukraine and not only. And for now, please don't forget to check the link which I put for the ground news right in the video description below. If you click the link and subscribe for the ground news, you support the job that I do here on YouTube.
Also muss ich auch sagen, Dennis ist ein super YouTube-Channel, auch wenn er Ukraine ist, er macht es halt sehr sachlich und zeigt halt die Perspektive eines Ukrainer, wo aber auch manchmal hinterfragt. Also er ist nicht nur Ja und Amen sagen, sondern, sagen wir so, er unterstützt seinen Staat, aber er tut nicht, sagen wir so, über alle Himmel loben, wie es zum Beispiel jemand anders hier macht, wo man hier gerade sieht. Genau, also es gibt ja andere YouTube-Channel, wo da ein bisschen extremer sind. Und das ist jetzt eine Botschaft von unserer Brigadier Daniel Krause. Der hat jetzt auch da eine wichtige Botschaft, wo ich vielleicht mal anhören sollte.
Wir sind hier im Rosengarten mit dem
Also ich tue es schon schnell übersetzen, mein Schweizerdeutsch ist vielleicht für andere schwierig.
Brigadier Daniel Krauer. Herr Brigadier, hinter uns ist die wunderschöne Stadt Bern, ein wunderschöner Tag, aber es könnte auch ganz anders aussehen. Welche Bedrohungen gibt es für unser schönes Land im Moment?
Ich sehe aktuell zwei Formen der Bedrohung. Erstens etwas, was wir heute bereits sehen, ist die Rückkehr von der Machtpolitik.
Das ist das Erste, was er sagt. Es ist mittlerweile die Rückkehr der Machtpolitik, wo wieder auf dem Tablett geworden ist von Russland und USA-Seiten. Und auch in kleineren Staaten, wo vielleicht nicht gerade in unserer Nähe sind, hat das auch schon angefangen.
Mit der ganzen Desinformation und der ganzen Beeinflussung, kombiniert mit Cyberangriff, auch gegen die Armee, Spionage gegen die Armee.
Ja, also ein Cyberangriff auch, glaube ich, in der Schweiz durchgeführt. Ich habe einen Freund, der ist dort tätig. Und hat mir da solche Sachen berichtet.
Wenn wir auf Europa schauen, mit all diesen Sabotageaktionen, müssen wir uns vielleicht auch diesbezüglich in naher Zukunft Gedanken machen. Und das Zweite ist, all die Potenziale, die vorhanden sind, um die Schweiz eben aus der Distanz anzugreifen, die sind vorhanden, die haben die Reichweite und da ist die Distanz kein Schutz mehr vor der Wirkung dieser Waffen.
Das sind Betreuungen, die es aktuell gibt. Wie sieht es in Zukunft aus? Was seht ihr da auf uns, wo auf uns zukommt?
Ja, einerseits sehe ich das Wiedererstarken von der Machtpolitik, das Recht oder die Stärke vom Recht.
Ich hoffe, ihr versteht, was ihr sagt, sonst macht so Hilfe, ich verstehe nichts.
Wird durch das Recht vom Stärkeren ersetzt.
Genau, das Recht wurde ersetzt durch das Recht des Stärkeren. Das ist jetzt, was jetzt neu in der Weltpolitik abgeht.
Die Sprache ist sehr ruppig geworden und Narrativ für die nächste Eskalationsstufe werden vorbereitet. Und zudem ein weiterer Trend ist die Investitionen wieder in die Streitkräfte. Man sieht die massiven Gelder, die in die Streitkräfte hineinfließen, damit Kapazitäten und Fähigkeiten wieder aufgebaut werden können. Und nicht nur ins Material wird investiert, sondern eben auch in Personalstärke. Sei das im Baltikum jetzt schon seit Monaten oder ganz frisch in Deutschland und in Italien.
Und jetzt für euch persönlich, ihr als Mensch, aber auch in eurer Funktion, was ist die grösste Drohung für uns?
Meine grösste Befürchtung ist, dass wir nicht bereit sein werden, dass wir überrascht werden. Zum einen, weil wir einfach der Weltlage, die sich so komplett geändert hat, die auch Konsequenzen hat auf die Schweiz, viel zu wenig bewusst sind und unsere Schwergewichte vielleicht am falschen Ort setzen und priorisieren.
Herr Brigadier, besten Dank.
Danke auch vielmals.
So, da habt ihr mal gerade gesehen gehabt, was die Schweizer so erzählen. Lasst mal in die Kommentare rein, was ihr drüber denkt. Das ist auch vielleicht mal eine Perspektive, wo man nicht so kennt. Jetzt geben wir mal eine Weiterentwicklung von einer Anti-Drohnen-Munition, was man halt in Standardpatronen reintun kann, um gegen Drohnen sicher zu werden. Und da gab es jetzt eine interessante Weiterentwicklung. Die habe ich auch erst gestern entdeckt. Das gucke ich gerne mit euch an.
Back in December 2024,
Ich mache es wieder auf Deutsch, weil ja, natürlich die gute Information kriegst du meistens mehr auf Englisch wie auf dem Deutschen.
I published a video examining the Russian practice of creating rudimentary anti-drone rounds from a 5.45 cartridge case and a handful of ball bearings, BBs.
Genau, das wurde vorher mit Schrumpfschläuchen gemacht. Das war die alte Entwicklungsstand und das hat sich jetzt
The
weiterentwickelt.
BBs are encapsulated in shrink-wrap tubing and then loaded into the cartridge case like a conventional bullet. This was seen to be relatively effective, with evidence of multiple workshops independently producing the ammunition. The ad hoc production of the ammunition has been seen in locations ranging from kitchen tables to well laid out workshops. The rounds have also been tested by Ukrainian forces, and there's been some interest in replicating this DIY buckshot cartridge, but it's unclear if this has come to fruition. Shotguns appear to be much more prevalent with the Ukrainian forces. 3D printing has become a key element in so many aspects of the ongoing war, so it was almost inevitable that it would be leveraged in making the ad hoc anti-drone ammunition. It appears that several Russian workshops have developed what I'm going to call 3D printed sabots to replace the shrink-wrap tubing. It appears that this move towards the 3D printed sabots is an effort to prevent the barrel from being fouled by the plastic tubing. This is an issue which has been highlighted in a number of Russian posts, and also in a borescope video published by Ukrainians
Und das war auch ein bisschen meine Denkweise, es ist nicht gesund für den Lauf, sowas.
who tested some of the homemade rounds. The shrink wrap likely disintegrates in the barrel, leaving behind polymer residues, whereas the 3D printed sabots seem to remain intact until they leave the barrel. The first sighting of the 3D printed sabots came on the 23rd of February, when a Russian Telegram channel shared a video showing the printing and assembly of the anti-drone ammunition, with 3D printers printing a bullet-shaped sabo. The design and production has been attributed to the assault detachment of the 33rd Regiment of the 20th Guards Motor Rifle Division. The design consists of a two-piece clamshell-like design, which encapsulates the BBs.
Und das ist eben genau jetzt das Interessante. Was ist der Unterschied davon? Vorher haben wir uns ja einen Schrumpfschläucher reingetan und was jetzt die neue macht, sie tun es jetzt halt genauso wie so 2 Lego-Teile, einfach, dass da drin solche kleine Kugeln reinpassen. Und diese Shell oder diese Plastikgehäuse hält so lange, bis es den Lauf verlässt, dann splittert es sich auf und dann schießt es raus. Der ganze Vorteil ist davon, dass es wirklich effektiv ist und den Lauf nicht beschädigt.
And can be loaded into the 545 cartridge case like a conventional projectile. The video shows 3 3D printers printing the sabos, which hold 4 rounds each. It then shows how the standard cartridge's projectile is pulled from the case, the sabos are loaded with BBs, and then the sabo is tapped down into the case. The video then shows an individual firing full auto at a target said to be 75 meters away, though the distance is difficult to verify. It then cuts to a shot of the rifle disassembled, and the individual filming states that after 4 magazines, there is no plastic residue in the gas system, barrel, or action. On the 26th of February, another Russian Telegram channel, Time of Terror, which describes itself as run by a Special Forces drone group, shared a photograph of a cartridge loaded with a sabo with 2 halves of an empty sabo next to it, stating that they've been asked to develop the sabo by a subscriber.
Also jetzt kann man fast sagen, dass sie kurz vor der Seriereife sind. Also es ist jetzt natürlich noch eine Kleinserie mit 3D-Drucker, aber das kann man sich auch industriell herstellen. Es gibt offiziell eigentlich eine Munition, kann man sagen, wo wirklich als Munition durchgeht gegen Antidrohnen.
Subscriber, and that tests were ongoing. The nose of the sabo has a noticeably less pronounced point compared to the first example. A day later, the same
Da wird natürlich jetzt noch ausprobiert, aber ich denke, dass das auch bald bei uns eingeführt soll werden für die Infanterie.
Telegram channel shared another photograph of the ammunition, this time with a 5BB sabo, next to a bottle of Crossman Copperhead BBs. Several days later, on the 2nd of March, a short video showing a version of the sabo without the pointed nose was shared. It appears that the point of the sabo's nose has been filed down. The machine-translated caption for the video reads, "Based on the feedback, certain modifications are made. After checking them and collecting feedback from other units, we will stop at the most working version." The video shows a few bursts being fired and several hits on a target downrange. The video appears to have been filmed somewhat close to the front line. Later the same day, another photo of some of the ammunition was shared, notably with the sabos seated at different depths. The caption mentioned the changes that had been made based on feedback. In the new version, the diameter of the bullet base was reduced by 0.2mm and a chamfer was added instead of rounding. The diameter of the first solid cut ring was reduced, which ensures easier pressing. It seems that these adaptations have been made to enable the easier loading of the projectiles into the cartridge case. On the 4th of March, the same Telegram channel shared a video demonstrating the assembly of one of the rounds. The video shows the pulling of a bullet and then the filling of the sabo with 5 BBs before the 2 halves of the sabo are pressed together and are placed into the cartridge case and tapped home with a hammer. The video's caption reads, "At present we observe significant potential in the application of the proposed modernization. Tests are ongoing, collecting data which is necessary for forming a final conclusion on this issue." The video also includes testing.
Man merkt einfach, dass halt, er drückt es mit der Zange zusammen und dann drückt es runter und das soll dann ungefähr genug sein, dass es zusammenhält.
Footage of the ammunition being fired.
Also man merkt wirklich die Munition und die Entwicklungen, die Feinheit, es sieht nach einer kleinen Feinheit aus, aber es ist eine große Weiterentwicklung für Antidrohnenmunition.
At a small rectangle of cardboard.
Weil der Vorteil ist, es macht auch die Logistik einfacher, wenn du halt genau in gleichen Munitionskisten wie Sturmgewehrmunition auch Antidrohnenmunition oder den gleichen Plattform verwenden kannst. Das heißt, ich muss nicht die ganze Logistik umstalten für nur Schrotflintenmunition.
The first two strings have a horizontal spread, but with most of the BBs appearing to hit the target. A series of short bursts shows more hits on the target. The engagement range appears to be around 20 to 25 meters. On the same day, they also shared a short clip of a PKM machine gun being loaded with a belt holding 3 rounds of the anti-drone ammunition. Not much can be seen in the video, but it's likely that the 7.62x54R sabos can hold perhaps 6 or 7 BBs. The caption notes, in parallel, tests are being conducted for the modernization rifle bullet 7.62. 3 rounds were fired in single mode. Results will be added later. Looking ahead, I will say there is potential. The usefulness of having a machine
Und das ist natürlich auch wieder gut, weil du kannst plötzlich wirklich mit einer Wache mit einem G da lassen und der hat halt genau Anti-Drohnen-Munition und kann so die Drohnen bekämpfen.
gun with a belt of anti-drone buckshot ammunition is somewhat debatable. While perhaps not ideal for a patrol or an assault, having a belt of anti-drone ammunition while defending a position might be useful.
Also kann natürlich, wir wissen es noch nicht, aber es kann mir vorstellen, dass das sicher nützlich sein kann.
A post from the 8th of March shows development of a loading punch and the use of nail varnish on the nose of the round as a means of adhering the nose of the sabo together, preventing it from parting. The most recent post from the Time of Terror channel features a couple of photographs of a large batch of 5 BB sabos. The caption states, made a batch of 10,000. The test variants showed a very satisfactory result. I'm waiting for further feedback and hope to put an end to this process as soon as possible. The adaptation to 3D printing is definitely an interesting evolution of the concept of the AK buckshot round, but as with the tubing, it remains to be seen if production can be scaled at the local level. The evolution of these makeshift anti-drone rounds has moved rapidly, with the shift to 3D printing in some areas leading to the potential production of thousands of rounds. While printing may expedite one element of production, the loading of the sabos and the seating of them into cartridge cases remains a bottleneck in the manufacturing of the rounds. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and
Was kann man sicher mal schnell auch irgendwie lösen. Also wenn du die plötzlich Massenproduktion herstellen kannst, ist das sicher eine gute Nachricht für die Infanterie.
subscribe. If you didn't check out our earlier video on the shrink wrap tube AK buckshot rounds, then definitely check that.
Also das war mal vielleicht interessant zu sehen, weil vorher waren es halt mit Schrumpfschläuchen gemacht gehabt, das habe ich auch noch vor ein paar Tagen erzählt, aber das ist jetzt die neue Entwicklung. 3D-Drucken und dann kannst du halt so den Lauf schonen und es funktioniert halt auch, ohne dass du den Lauf, sagen wir so, gerade voll zerstörst, sondern du wirklich noch dein Gewehr auch einsetzen kannst mit Sturmgewehrmunition. So, das ist jetzt auch noch so eine Entwicklung, es ist zwar von einem Jahr, aber es ist wichtig für das folgende Video zum Verstehen, wie diese Technik funktioniert. Und das ist halt noch interessant.
The MSD5, a small handheld shotgun-like device which has been suggested as an anti-drone weapon. With the massive increase in UAV and FPV drone use, various means of combating them ranging from electronic warfare to simple hunting shotguns have been deployed by both sides. In recent weeks, a number of Ukrainian social media accounts have shared the idea of using the MSD5 as a short-range defense against diving first-person view drones. I hadn't seen the weapon before, and none of the posts about it explicitly mentioned its designation or manufacturer. I did some research and found that the small handgun was called the MSD5, and it was manufactured by Stellarium SV, a company based in northern Ukraine. In January, Sergei Flash, a Ukrainian serviceman and communications specialist, posted a video discussing the need for an immediate defense against FPVs and held up an MSD5, describing it as a possible way of protection, but emphasized that his aim was not to advertise the device, but to simply call attention to a possible remedy for the soldiers. Stellarium SV's website explains that rather than being a weapon, it's primarily sold as a signaling device, with 5 different 12x88 cartridges available. 2 signalling cartridges, a noise cartridge for scaring off animals, and a cartridge for extinguishing flames, and one for spraying plants to treat and protect them from various pests and diseases. It's unclear if the device is robust enough or has barrels suitable for firing something like birdshot pellets. Stellarium SV note that the device is made from high-strength plastics based on reinforced polyamide, but do state that the drum can be fitted with stainless steel or titanium liners. The device has 5 tubes or barrels and is electrically fired. It appears to have a crossbolt safety in front of the grip below the exposed trigger. It weighs 800 grams and is powered by 3 CR123A batteries. Stellarium SV's site lists the device's price.
Salut Brian, wir schauen uns gerade Drohnenabwehrwaffen. Also nachher werde ich noch euch was zeigen, was meine Idee war, gegen Drohnen anzuwenden, hat sich Sauer, eine Unterfirma von ihnen, was auch entwickelt, wo sehr interessant ist, wo meine Idee sehr nahe kommt, ist einfach halt mit Drohnen umgesetzt worden, aber ist, sagen wir so, im Grunde die gleiche Idee, einfach halt drohnifiziert, kann man so sagen.
Price as €430.
Gibt es das Wort überhaupt? Egal.
On the 20th of February, Flash posted another short video of himself firing an MSD5 at a range with the caption, "Tested today the new cartridges for the soldier's weapon against FPV. Specialists are working. I hope we will produce a product that we will give to every soldier. My task after the product is ready is to achieve its introduction into the armed forces." Along with the video, he also posted a photograph of a target peppered with
Hat er so, als kleine Extrawaffe würde ich es schon mitnehmen.
holes, presumably from small shot. The video shows the MSD5 being fired with minimal recoil, suggesting a light load. I reached out to Stellarium SV about the potential conversion of the MSD5 into a personal anti-FPV weapon, and they were keen to stress that this is not a case use that we endorse or support, and that they don't produce a cartridge capable of this, and that anyone who makes adapted cartridges is not related to the company. Stellarium did note that the loading of cartridges with shot was possible, but getting the powder charge right was key. They also noted that the MSD5 doesn't have sights, which might make aiming difficult, though at the probable engagement ranges of FPVs, instinctive point shooting may be what Sergei Flash had in mind. I also reached out to Sergei Flash to inquire about how he was adapting the MSD5, but at the time of publication, he hasn't responded. While the MSD5 may not have been designed with the anti-drone role in mind, the concept of a similar handheld, lightweight, last-ditch defense against FPVs seems like a sensible answer to an urgent and difficult problem. Sources and imagery suggest that the use of conventional shotguns is increasing on the front line, with both sides putting them into use. And that'll be the topic for a future video. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. Please do share these videos with friends, and if you'd like to, you can support.
Und das ist jetzt auch eine interessante Entwicklung. Und jetzt kommen wir noch zur letzten Entwicklung. Genau wegen die Shahid-Drohnen haben jetzt Sig Sauer, ein bisschen, also eine Unterfirma von ihnen, das entwickelt, wo ich mich da unterhalten habe an der Waffenmesse. Ich habe das jetzt auch gefunden, weil mich das wirklich interessiert hat, was kann man dagegen tun, und habe mal ein bisschen meine Idee geteilt gehabt. Da hat er geschmunzelt gehabt, ja, es gibt so eine ähnliche Idee, wo gerade auf den Markt gekommen ist.
Since our last video on gun-armed drones in September 2024, both sides have continued to develop the technology. We'll be taking a look at some of the latest developments in gun-armed rotor-powered drones in a future video. In this video,
und er berichtet dann davon, und das ist auch noch nicht so alt, also ihr seht 10 Tage, also eine sehr frische Information.
we're going to look at the latest development, a gun-armed fixed-wing UAV. The first imagery of the Zigzag UAV, developed by the Ukrainian drone manufacturer Sky Defenders, was shared on social media on the 15th of March. Shared on the Sky Defenders official social media channels, the minute-long video shows a fixed-wing UAV being launched, and once in the sky the video cuts to an onboard camera which features a crude but unmistakable sight ring. In the nose of the UAV, we can see a pair of tubes set side by side. The video of the test flight shows that the aircraft is a twin-prop UAV. This appears to be the second fixed-wing drone developed by Sky Defenders. The first, the Viri M7, which is now said to be being delivered to Ukrainian units, is a loitering or one-way munition. The M7 is powered by a single rear prop and has an apparent range of 33 kilometers and a warhead in its nose. In an earlier video shared by Misha, a member of the Sky Defenders team, posted on around the 5th of March, we get a closer look at the Zigzag gun-armed drone. The video's caption reads, "Please support the combat tests of the Zigzag interceptor aircraft. This UAV is quite an achievement for my small but really awesome team. We put all our resources into this project." The Zigzag has been in development since at least February 2025, with Sky Defenders sharing a short video from flight testing of the drone, with the UAV seen without its guns. It appears that the drone actually has 4 rather than 2 gun barrels. There's so far only a short clip of the drone's guns being tested, but it appears that the drone's flight isn't impacted by the recoil of the gun. From the fuselage design,
Ich denke genau, dass sie diese Schrotflinte, wo wir gesehen haben, mit Hände einfach da vorne eingebaut haben. Oder es kann auch sein, technisch, dass sie vielleicht eine größere Schrotflinte insgesamt hinten reingebaut haben und vielleicht hinten, ja, das siehst du, hinten kannst du es öffnen. Ich denke, da ladest du, vielleicht tust du wirklich solche Pins spannen, das ist ja keine Hexerei. Die müssen dann einfach elektronisch ausgelöst werden.
appears that the drone will not be using the counterweight recoilless gun designs that we've seen used on quadcopter gun-armed drones so far.
Okay, hinten ist auch eine Klappe. Ja, gut, so länger der Lauf ist, umso weiter kannst du schießen. Also es macht schon Sinn, dass du vielleicht den Lauf wirklich weiter hinten reingebaut hast.
It's likely that the Zigzag is powerful enough to fire conventional style shotgun barrels and withstand the recoil. In the video we can see the aiming post and ring. Behind it is a 360-degree gimbal camera which appears to be stabilized, which enables the piloting of the UAV and the aiming of the guns. While the M7 drone is a one-way munition and not designed to return, the Zigzag appears to be more robust and intended for repeat sorties. So far, the range, weight, and loitering time of the UAV is currently unknown. The Sky Defender Zigzag represents another really interesting step in the rapidly evolving gun-armed drone.
Und ihr merkt, also was ich euch alles präsentiere, sind die meisten Entwicklungen in den letzten 2 Wochen passiert. Und so extrem kann sich teilweise entwickeln, die ganze Technologien, dass du fast nicht nachkommst und dass du immer hier am Ball bleibst. Und ich muss sagen, die Waffenmesse hat mir genau das zum Beispiel beigebracht, wo mir gar nicht bekannt war. Obwohl ich eine ähnliche Idee im Kopf hatte, aber das ist natürlich auch eine sehr effektive Methode und noch billiger.
Space in Ukraine. Thanks for watching. I hope you found that interesting. We'll be taking a look at recent developments in
Ja, spannende Sache, oder? Genau. So, dann gucken wir uns auch das letzte. Das ist ein bisschen mehr wieder, kann man sagen, Unterhaltung, aber das war jetzt mal die ganzen Entwicklungen, was passiert sind gegen Drohnenabwehr, um was sich da ist. Besonders gegen die Glasfaserdrohnen, sag so ganz ehrlich, technisch fällt mir auch nichts Großes ein, wie man das kontern könnte. Weil Jammers nützen natürlich nichts, sobald ein Kabel dran gebunden ist. Du musst irgendwie das Kabel halt zerstören können. Da bist du aber auch wieder auf dem physischen, also dann ist es wahrscheinlich einfacher, die Drohne zu jagen, als das Kabel, weil das Kabel ist kleiner wie 1 Millimeter. Finde das mal. Und die Drohne ist ein bisschen größer. Ja. Deswegen, es entwickelt sich immer weiter hier. Und er erklärt mal die Drohnenentwicklung und so weiter. Von der Sicht von dem Infanteristen. Und ich muss sagen, ich habe es jetzt vor ein paar Tagen erstmal probiert gehabt, so eine Drohne zu fliegen. Und ich habe halt ein bisschen fliegerisch eine Vorbildung, weil ich war Segelflieger. Ja, sagen wir so, ich würde wahrscheinlich schon in den Sand setzen, aber gib mir vielleicht 3 Tage Zeit und ich bin fähig, so einen Teil zu fliegen, zumindest das Ziel zu treffen.
Is there a way to actually defend yourself against FPV drones, or are we all just helpless in future
Denkt noch die Möglichkeiten, wo ich euch da gegeben habe und die Lektion.
wars? Granted, we don't live in Eastern Europe right now, but with the war kicking off at the border between the cartel and the US government, like who knows how FPVs could be employed
Das haben jetzt die Amerikaner.
against the American people. So it's probably a good idea for us to start ramping up our drone and counter drone skill sets. And plus, it's super fun.
Yeah, lots of fun if you're the one who gets to sit in the same spot and fly a drone. Well, today we are going to explore and demonstrate just a few different ways for us to defend ourselves against FPV drones with munitions involved. We have 4 different kinds of shotguns with 4 different barrel lengths, 4 different kinds of ammo, all being shot at 3 different distances to see what kind of gun setup with ammo is going to perform the best against an FPV drone. We're also going to take a look at what rounds, what shotguns will actually do against an actual drone. We are going to shoot drones in a legal way. More on that later. Finally, we're going to discuss what it looks like to actually break contact and get away from a drone, because shooting it may or may not be the best course of action if you are being pursued by one. With all that being said, let's get into it. All right, guys, the guns. First one up is the Genesis Arms. This is a semi-auto mag-fed AR-style system with a 5-inch barrel and a Huxworks suppressor. I really hope that this thing does well. Then we have the Mossberg Shockwave. This is actually a 14-inch barrel pump action. Not really sure how I'm gonna feel about holding this out in front of my face trying to hit a drone, but I guess we'll see. Then moving over here, we have the classic Remington 870. This is a 20-inch barrel.
Wrong.
Keep in mind, you could always add chokes and do a bunch of stuff in here. We have a medium choke in this pump gun, but if you want to run your own experiments, do so. Finally, we have the Super X2. So this is a semi-auto awesome duck gun or something for turkey, whatever it is you're doing with it. But this is going to be a typical gun that someone may have that is semi-auto, with a longer barrel. I believe this one comes in at 22 inches.
Wrong.
And with the longest barrel, you are going to lose some mobility, but man, shooting out to 45 yards, no doubt, this is probably going to be the best to play with. Guys, we have to take just a few minutes and thank some of the sponsors that make content like this possible every single week for free for you on YouTube. And a brand that's been with us from the beginning, he's a good friend. We've been running his gear for a long time before he was a sponsor, is Steel Industries. Steel is selling some of the highest quality night vision devices on the market. They also have the best customer service in our experience in regards to night vision in this game. And they do have a brick and mortar store. They're not just online, so you can actually go down to Central Florida, go into their store, handle some night vision before you actually end up buying them, and walk out from their facility. So go check out Steel Industries. Link is in the description. Now, I know drones and shotguns and thermal and night vision and all this stuff is super cool, and it builds popularity because of video games and then times of conflict, and look what's going on in current warfare. But all of these things, including gas masks, have a niche place inside of our everyday lives, even for guys like you and I, common Americans. Now, Avon Protection has been the standard when it comes to...
Ja, deswegen gucken wir mal ein bisschen, was im Teich so planen und lernen, weil wir können einiges trotzdem noch von ihnen lernen.
Gas masks. I believe since World War I, they have been making gas masks for a very, very long time, and they have recently started selling these products.
Das ist eigentlich interessant für euch. Also, ich sehe jetzt gerade hier bei der Abstimmung, 83% sagen ja, 17% sagen nein, und wir haben 12 Stimmen bis jetzt.
To the common everyday American here in the US. So go check out.
So, das ist mal die ganze Werbung. Jetzt kommen wir zur Munition.
Next, of course, we had to buy another typical household ammo for 12 gauge. Trap or skeet or anything along those lines knows that the kind of ammo that you're putting into your shotgun is going to play mega effects on what happens up in the air or downrange. Now, we started with just picking up some typical birdshot 12 gauge 7.5, 2 3/4. This is going to be the kind of federal ammo that you can buy at Walmart, which is actually where we went and picked it up. Next, of course, we had to buy another typical household ammo for 12 gauge, which is your buckshot. So this is going to be 9 pellets, 1,300 feet per second, 2 3/4.
Das kann gut sein, Sebastian.
Just your standard Winchester double-aught buck. But then we get into some more of the interesting stuff. We talked to a buddy who is a just avid duck hunter, and he lives and breathes this stuff, and he recommended 2 different kinds of ammo specifically for drones. The first one being the Federal TSS Black Cloud. Now, this is the stuff that you could liken it to your 77 grain OTM Sierra Match King, but for 12 gauge. So this is the stuff where you're actually shooting birds out of the air. That's what you want to go with. So a lot of this shotgun stuff is kind of new to us. We had to do a bunch of research, but at 1450 FPS, 7-shot, I'm curious about this one, as well as the TSS Turkey load. So this
Und ich hoffe wirklich für dich ist es eine sehr interessante Sache, um das alles zu erfahren, weil ich denke, besonders in modernen Kriegsführung ist es genau wichtig geworden, eine gute Plattform zu haben, wo man halt schnell die Informationen für einen findet. Deswegen ist es halt wirklich interessant, sowas zu sehen und auch vielleicht damit auch in einem Chat sich dabei zu unterhalten und seine Erfahrungen damit auszutauschen und seine Gedanken. Weil ich denke, genau in der heutigen Zeit ist es umso wichtiger, dass wir uns wirklich alle vernetzen. Und deswegen bist du, wo gerade hinter dem Bildschirm guckt, sehr wichtig, mich dabei zu unterstützen, weil umso mehr Reichweite ich habe, umso mehr können wir dieses Wissen verbreiten. Dank dir. Und da hilfst du mir extrem, wenn du da unten kurz das Abo klicken würdest. Danke dir.
This one is a 1 3/4 ounce 7-shot. So these two are probably going to be the higher performing ones, but they are quite a bit more expensive. So let's just see from lowest price and most common to highest price and highest performing, I would assume. But the big question is, what's it going to do in these different barrel lengths?
So for the targets, we are shooting targets at 15, 30, and 45 yards. That kind of stacks up the variables pretty quick, so you get a bunch of data points by watching this. There are other awesome drone shooting videos that you guys can watch and get even more data points, but essentially that's 4 guns times 4 different types of load times 3 different distances. You're getting at least 48 different data points here, which is awesome. So, but for the targets themselves, it's actually kind of hard to make a drone target. I see a lot of them where the drone is facing like you're looking straight up at it, it's broadside. But whenever it comes to FPV drones aren't coming in at you like this. They're coming straight at you or at an angle. So let's take this for demonstration, right? You are not going to be shooting this while it's broadside. Now I could fly this super fast, like up to 100 miles an hour, like this, straight at you. But if that's the case, my camera is going to be having to look straight at you as well. So for FPV striking drones, the munition is usually on the front. Either it's a munition that is impact driven, or it's like you've seen the wires. I don't want to get too technical, but it's basically requires impact, which means the camera has to be forward facing to see where it's hitting. So if it's forward facing, likely I'm going to be flying it about at this angle coming into you, right? So that is how we kind of simulated this on this piece of paper. The size of the drone is going to make a difference too. You get
Okay, ich habe jetzt nur die Standard Atemschutzmaske von der Schweizer Armee, mit der habe ich sehr gute Erfahrungen gemacht, weil du halt hier vorne hast du halt genau die Nase gedreckt und wenn der Gummi genau dicht ist und der Gummi genau richtig gesetzt hast, kann die gar nicht beschlagen und wir haben noch extra Anti-Beschlag-Spray immer noch reingetan gehabt, damit es garantiert nicht beschlägt, aber selbst ich habe mal ein bisschen faul, habe es nicht reingetan, es ist nie beschlagen.
could have a more chunky, beefy drone.
Aber dafür hast du halt genau, du bist halt das, was in der Mitte theoretisch über dein Sichtfeld stören würde. Aber ja, auf dem Schießplatz habe ich meine Ziele damit getroffen.
Drone like this, FPV drone, that is going to give you more stuff to hit, right? But you could do something smaller like this. This is a 5-inch prop. This is a 10-inch prop. But the size can vary wildly. Now, the reason why we wanted to test this against FPV drones is because the other style of drone, which is more loitering or more recon style, think of like your Mavics, right? Your Mavic 3s. Those are going to tend to be droppers if they have any sort of munition on them, which means they can change elevation and be beyond the range of a shotgun easily, especially depending on the type of munition that's on it. If it's a timed munition, like we've seen, like grenades being dropped, well, they have to be low enough to where the grenade is going to actually have to hit the ground before it blows up. But if it's a striking munition, it can be higher beyond shotgun ranges and actually has time to stabilize on its way down to make that perfect impact. So you could easily have a loiter drone dropping munitions on you that is out of the range of a shotgun. So today we are just sticking with FPV. With that being said, let's get to the shooting. 30. 5.
Okay, das war interessant. Man sieht.
Let's get to the shooting.
Also 12 Kein Bridge.
30. 5.
Yards sind 95 cm ungefähr. So können Sie umrechnen, also sagen wir, es sind ungefähr 40 Meter Reichweite. Gute Trefferwahrscheinlichkeit 30 Meter. Schon schwerer, dass es Damage hätte. Gut, hier jetzt den Motor getroffen, wahrscheinlich wäre das abgestürzt. Und 45 Meter, gar keine Chance.
Okay.
Okay. Sie wäre blind. Also, ich würde eher mit die andere Munition aktuell feuern.
That's not bad. It's actually very doable.
May have missed that, right?
No, well,
No, I see it.
Yeah.
I think.
Okay, das hat sich im Mitteldistanz. Okay, kann sein, dass er ein bisschen verschossen hat. Aber da hat er gut getroffen.
I don't even know if I hit that at 45, dude.
The wad looked accurate. Oh yeah, the gun was 0 to 30. That's what it was. It was 0 to 30. And so am I. I'm 0 to 30.
Sure you don't need your readers?
Bro.
Maybe.
So for reference,
Wait, what?
For reference, here's what you had at 30 yards. Like sick, dude.
Okay, let me shoot this one again.
We have to, so we also need to note, like, these are 2 shots. Here's why.
No, you're right.
Because
I know.
it's like, it is a longer barrel than the Genesis, but the shootability factor.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Just the shootability.
Yeah, that's what it is.
It's the gun.
You're right. We're gonna blame it on the gun.
No, officer, I wasn't drinking. It was the car that ran into the other person.
All right, listen. At this distance, I could just shoot the drone with the pistol
So, manchmal diese Humor. So ein Soldatennummer.
and be better off.
With
Like,
you don't
let's
even
be
need
real.
sights.
Hey, we should do that.
Buck, shockwave.
God, I hope he fails. I hope he misses so bad. There you go. God, he's so terrible at shooting. Oh God.
What happened?
I'll tell you what happened. Nothing. Dang, that's crazy, man.
Dude.
Dude, here. Did it hit anything?
I think it's your wad, bro.
I think you're right.
Black cloud and the shockwave. Dude, yeah, that's bottom. I am bottom of the target.
My hand came completely off of that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, that hurt. Oh,
Did it get you?
yeah. Oh, got some pectoralis angina, you know what I'm saying?
Angina.
Yeah, it's a fancy term for chest pain.
Dude, there's 2 words that are absolutely disgusting in the English lexicon: angina and areola. Like those 2 words, if anyone ever says it, ugh.
Dude.
All right, 870 bird. Let's go.
Schönes Trefferbild. Okay.
Shotguns smell different.
Also was man davon entnehmen kann, meistens, egal, die meisten Munition, die wir jetzt gesehen haben, sind bis 29 Meter wirklich effektiv.
You know?
Yeah.
Like ARs have their own smell and shotguns have their own smell.
Okay. 170 Mod Talk. Like. Okay, merken wir uns.
What's all, dude?
That's all, dude.
What's up? What's up? Good God. That hurts.
There's a lot of oomph in those loads.
That's
You know what I'm saying?
that's what happens when you get a small frame guy versus a large frame shell.
dude. Peppered him.
Paste him up.
Top paper, so.
Also sag so, mit viel Glück 30 Meter.
Dude. Oh my God.
Nick and Josh have been making fun of me behind the scenes because for the past several weeks, I have been living entirely on emergency food rations. One of our big projects we have coming up is me going an entire month eating only emergency food rations. 6 years ago, I bought a 1 month food supply from My Patriot Supply. I was just a normal guy, normal customer, bought it, and it's just been sitting in a shed for 6 years. So I finally busted it out and started going through it, and that is what I am eating entirely. So far, so good. Got a couple of interesting things to tell you once the project wraps up. Now that we started DC, they are sponsors of this channel, which is awesome. You can go to preparewithdc.com and get a huge discount on their.
Aber ich muss sagen, schon mal ein interessanter Bericht von Schrotflinten, welche Munition, welche Lauflänge und so weiter, welchen Schaden macht. Weil, also bis jetzt kann man, wenn nehmen, sagen wir so, Faustregel 30 Meter, ist wirklich mit dieser Schrotmunition was zu reißen von der Treffenwehrbild her.
Emergency food. Tonight for dinner, I'm going to be having creamy stroganoff.
Und 30 Meter eine FPV-Drohne, wo direkt auf dich zufliegt, schwierig. Aber wenn du auf dem Fahrzeug bist und der FPV-Drohne hinterher fliegen muss, dann hast du natürlich eine Chance, dort zu wirken.
I've actually already had this one. I think I ate this on night 2, and it was absolutely delicious. Go to preparewithdc.com and get a discount on emergency food supplies. It's way more important than drones or guns or night vision or any of that stuff.
Shooting, let's take a moment and talk about the guns themselves at distances with different kinds of ammo. So the Genesis, the shortest barrel that we have, no choke, mag-fed semi-auto, super cool gun, but it is definitely purpose-built. But when it comes to shooting birds or drones, it was probably our least performing. Actually, it was. The saving grace for it is the fact that it does have a stock. This is an SBR, and so being that we can actually pull this into our shoulder, the accuracy goes up, but the spread is diminished just because the barrel length is down at 5 inches. Now, what about the standard birdshot that pretty much anyone can buy over at Walmart? It actually did fairly well. I think the reason for that is because you are putting out so many more objects into the air. You have more projectiles going down range. We're increasing our opportunity to get a hit. And going back to that short barrel length, you need that. The fact that it's mag-fed and it feels a lot like an AR, you can fill the sky with whatever you have in that magazine. You can just keep pulling that trigger, have 10 rounds come out of this, and you're probably going to get a hit on whatever it is that you're shooting at. You may not have the most impact onto a drone, but man, it's lightweight, it's compact, and I can just keep pulling the trigger, throw a new mag in there if need be. The manufacturer's Genesis Arms did a test with the Federal Flight Control Buck, and it seemed to perform very well. The Mossberg Shockwave 590. This gun sucks. No, not really. This is a very purpose-built gun. The fact that you cannot stabilize it against your shoulder caused us to not even shoot the heavyweight 3-inch rounds. So that alone is a big no-no. You cannot just throw any kind of ammo in here. If you have 1-ounce slugs, sure, you could pull the trigger, but this is designed for breaching. This is designed for very close quarters.
Breaching ist, wenn man eine Tür aufkriegen will, irgendwo sich Zugang beschaffen will, und dafür wurde diese Schrotflinte entwickelt.
Stuff, hitting doorknobs or hinges and then getting that gun out of the way. If you had to shoot something in the air flying, you better hope that it's closer than 30 yards, because all three of us tried shooting this gun with different kinds of ammo, and the sighting system, holding this up near your face, yeah, you could luck out and get a hit, but we even took a couple extra shots off camera, and the accuracy component of it, despite the fact that it has a 14-inch barrel, I would not carry this for the sake of drones, because you just can't shoulder it, you can't get a good cheek weld. This is not designed for it. Next, the classic 870 with a 23-inch barrel and a medium choke. Now, with household birdshot, this actually did very well. Even out to 45, I was fairly impressed. But the best performing ammo through this gun, even out at distance, was the TSS Heavyweight. Seems to be a little bit of a theme here. Black Cloud and Heavyweight seem to be performing the best, but this is still a lightweight gun. You could get a tube extension and put more ammo on there if you need. But the fact that it is not semi-auto, man, if I was shooting a drone that was trying to kill me, let's say, I would want to have that semi not pump action. Finally, the Winchester Super X2. So this one is the one that we all thought was going to perform the best. 26-inch barrel, medium choke, and semi-auto. It's a winning formula there when you're trying to hit something moving in the air, and that's at least what we saw on paper. So with, again, standard household birdshot, it did okay. It did good. We could shoot this 100 times and we would start to see small variations in the patterns, but with the one test that we did, once again, that heavyweight, the TSS heavyweight, seemed to be getting the most rounds on paper, also the most rounds on our black printed out drone. So that, out of our standard for ammo, the 4 ones that we shot this time, the heavyweight seemed to perform the best across the board, except for the fact that I do not want to shoot that in the Shockwave, period, full stop. Also, you can't fit those heavyweight rounds into the mag on the Genesis. So there's a little bit of trade-off there. You gotta know what kind of shot shell you're actually putting into the gun. And you'll notice we haven't hardly even talked about buckshot at all. Here's the truth. If you are shooting at, again, let's say a bird or a drone, the reason that we're not shooting buckshot at birds is because you are putting more mass into those 9 or 7 pellets that are in the air. And so you are decreasing your opportunity for hits on a smaller target. So there's a reason why there's birdshot or target loads. It's because I want to put as many rounds into the air to increase my percentage for a hit on target. We definitely had some good printouts where we got one of these shotguns to get few good rounds of buckshot onto that drone. Man, if you made hit, that would be a knockdown on any of these drones, no questions asked. The downside is you are significantly decreasing your opportunity to get a hit. Totally some trade-offs. If I had to pick one gun and one load, I would take, well, even though it is going to have more recoil, the TSS heavyweight and this fairly inexpensive Super X2.
You think the ATF, TSA, you think those guys are bad? Wait till you meet the FAA. So the FAA has some interesting rules surrounding civilians and drones. It is fully illegal to shoot a drone out of the sky, and they will come down on you harder than any other government agency, basically. That being said, they also have a very important job. The FAA does do some things very, very well, like protect our skies and keep planes from running into each other, or from idiot drone hobbyists who want to, use their plane to accidentally interfere with actual aircraft. So there's a purpose to the organization, but they also have some absurd rules. One of them being you can't even shoot down your own drone on your own property, even if it's just a foot off the ground. But there's a little bit of a workaround. You can anchor it to the ground, or if we were indoor, like an indoor shooting range, then we could shoot it. Basically, it mitigates the chances of it flying off and flying away. Well, we happen to have a completely inoperable drone that is incapable of flight on its own. The reason why we're shooting this is we want to figure out, does birdshot actually make an impact on a modern drone? This is some pretty hard.
Und das ist eben auch jetzt ein wichtiger Punkt. Was macht das für einen Schaden auf einer Drohne? Dass man da vielleicht mal eine Referenz hat.
Plastics, there's some carbon fiber parts here as well. Can birdshot even penetrate it? If it were to even hit it, can it take it down? Props are a lot more resilient than people think. When you start running into limbs and
Wir machen hier ein bisschen Wissenschaft, meine Freunde.
And trees and stuff, sure, they can break, but they're a lot stronger than people give them credit for. So we're gonna shoot different shotguns with our favorite.
Lass gerne mal deine Stimme rein da und sag mir, ob du das interessant findest, was ich dir zeige.
Loads, the ones that prove to be most effective, from distance walking our way in, and see at what point does this drone start to fall apart. I don't think birdshot's gonna do anything to it, personally.
It's gonna take this thing down, one shot.
So we have an impact right here. That's just good old-fashioned plastic, man. Like nothing. Then we have
one here, but it didn't pass through. We're clean on the other side.
Under here is carbon fiber, and
one right here on the prop. Drew, you've actually been taking classes on drones. Is that gonna take a prop down?
No, not at all. Yeah. So these two are already screwed.
When this thing took a dive?
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh. That stopped on its own.
Dude, those bounced off the top.
Yeah. Glance off the top, cut into this tape a little bit. This was already damaged. You're definitely going to be hitting sensors. Granted, most analog FPV drones are not going to have, you know, sensors all around them to keep you from wrecking, right? You've got full manual control in acro. You're not going to have any of these like sideboard cameras or sensors. But
can you spin the props?
Yeah.
So in theory, you could still do a field repairable, swap props out, because you're able to spin this thing.
Sure, but nothing about like over-the-counter type drones like DJIs or Autels. Nothing beyond the props are truly field repairable.
Sure.
Like, yeah, maybe the motors, but you're getting into some like serious issues. And like, you know, if you hit any one of these sensors, the camera is also like not on here, and that's a very vulnerable spot. If you hit the camera, obviously now you're flying blind. So it becomes inoperable in a way, if that makes sense. All right, so this is obviously a different kind of drone, not like what you can buy off the shelf from like DJI or Autel, things like that. And so if you notice, like, these are all exposed components. So as you start putting materials into that, not only will it break it or tear it up, it can just cause overheating. The parts don't work correctly anymore. The parts aren't communicating correctly between one another. Not to mention you have an exposed antenna, which is what is giving you your feed. And so you also have exposed battery. If there was a munition on this, you'd also have exposed munition. So this is just one little data point on a modern off-the-shelf style of drone and what a typical hunting shotgun with the cheapest load that you can put into it can stop something like this. This has vulnerabilities in other ways, and in other ways it's a lot better. So for example, the one Josh has basically functions the same but has a protected body. So the internals and the electronics are completely kind of protected, at least to a certain degree, from things like birdshot or even some buckshot. So yeah, the point of this is not every drone is the same. And just in case someone finds a load that works well through a shotgun, doesn't mean it's going to work on all drones.
Super X2, birdshot, 15 yards. If this thing had a munition on it, bro, I would not want it to be going off this close to me.
I think the Russian grenades are like a 7-yard radius, 7-yard effective kill radius. Anything beyond that.
Also man sieht halt einfach, dass natürlich die Munition auch entscheidend ist, wie groß der Schaden ist, wenn man trifft.
Like, there's like, you could be okay.
Okay, well.
Allegedly.
Spin me up. Oh, that hurt.
Still though, the carbon fiber is taking a beating. Underneath here, look at this. I don't know if you can get underneath there. This carbon fiber down here, it looks like it's starting to penetrate the wires in there. This one's gone, so now you have a sensor, your front sensor gone. Again, going back to why you don't see stuff like this very much. All the luxuries are actually liabilities.
Honestly, I'm impressed. It's probably the angle.
Yeah.
The angle of the plastic. You know, if we were to hit it straight on, it might be different. But I am impressed at how much that's literally bouncing off.
Yeah. All right, let me try and spin it up, step back. Arming.
Nothing.
So yeah, you've essentially
downed.
Yes. But again, if you notice, it's not the props. It's not the arms, it's not the props. It's the internal workings of it that you've tampered with, essentially.
So eigentlich musst du wirklich schauen, dass du nicht versuchst, vielleicht etwas abzuschießen, sondern wirklich das Innenleben zerstört. Das können wir jetzt, glaube ich, rausnehmen.
Well, I'm impressed with the fact that even at 45 yards, shooting both paper and an actual drone with a 26-inch barrel, you're still struggling to, you know, completely take that thing out of the sky. You might damage it, but even still, man, like anything at 50 or 100, probably not going to happen.
And that's with the cheapest, lowest grade birdshot ammo.
Right.
So.
And that's not putting into consideration the speed that
The drone's
and
moving.
it's not moving.
They're moving at.
So maybe we should talk a little bit about moving. Obviously, shooting targets is not that difficult, but shooting a moving target can be very difficult, especially when it's going anywhere from 50 to 100 miles an hour. So this is where modern FPV drones, especially ones that are being built, like I think last year alone, Ukraine domestically built 2.2 million FPV drones and over 100,000 more like loitering or recon drones. So is there a good way to practice shooting flying targets that are going fast? Well, obviously clay pigeons is one way, or shooting skeet or trap. The problem is skeet and trap only go about 35 to 50 miles per hour. The big boy 10-inch prop FPV drone that you saw earlier, that thing will break 100 miles per hour even with a payload. So is shooting clays great practice for drones? It's not bad practice, but you just got to keep in mind that these things go way, way faster, and hitting a moving target that is small, nimble, can dance around and not just go straight is crazy. The saving grace is that when it starts to get on target, and granted, I've never rammed this into the back of a Russian tank, but what I have done with these is basically dive bomb from altitude, going 80 miles an hour, pull up at the last second, level it out, and then go along the ground towards a tree, and then I would hit it, right? That's not that hard to do. I'm not a pro at this, and even I can do that. Speeds like that are achieved by turning it upside like this, and basically you're zipping it forward. And you can watch professional drone racers do this all the time. The trick is to level it out smoothly and be able to keep that momentum going and hit your target. But whenever you do this, you also lose speed to a certain degree. And when you're getting onto a target that might be moving, it might be juking left and right, you have to significantly throttle that speed down.
Das ist so, was man vielleicht manchmal sieht, wo man meint, dass die Drohnenoperator mit ihrem Target spielen. Es ist halt natürlich, dass man Target Fixation kommt und dann natürlich versuchen sie vielleicht den zu treffen und der weicht immer im letzten Moment aus, weil die Drohnen werden auch immer längsamer mit der Zeit. Das ist, glaube ich, genau der Effekt, wo wir manchmal sehen und denken, dass sie spielen werden. Ich glaube, es ist nicht mal unbedingt, dass sie das machen.
And that's really what separates like the pros from amateurs, and being able to do that with an FPV drone, because it is hard to do, to slow it down. And then you're working more along those 30 to 50 mile per hour speeds. So clays are not a terrible way to practice. They're not the best. There's just a lot of variables, and that's kind of the thing that we want to keep on hitting on in this video, is that there are so many variables to this whole conversation, that the idea of like an ultimate drone shotgun with an ultimate load, it exists to a degree, but there's so many variables that can make it all just like worthless. All right, cover and concealment. Believe it or not, it's not super cool, it's not super fancy, but what you see all around me is way more effective against FPV drones than any shotgun with any load whatsoever. Your best bet is cover and concealment. Thick trees, thick bushes, like vines, all that stuff. This is an absolute nightmare. So as far as cover goes, that is a way better bet than spending a lot of time and money and ammo practicing to shoot down a drone with a shotgun. Now let's talk about concealment, because that's a little bit different. Here's the thing about FPV drones. I know a lot of us are used to seeing the really nice footage like coming out of the DJI Avata 2, we have one of those, and it's really nice, crisp, like 4K image quality, and that's because it's sending out a digital signal. It's very GPS based. So if we're talking about living in an electronic warfare world, an EW world, GPS jamming is a real thing. But by and large, the FPVs that we see on the modern battlefield are analog. They're essentially just using radio waves, and that's why the footage looks so much worse. And you can tell from some of the footage that we've taken, it's very hard to spot someone unless you're very close up or they happen to just be out in the middle of a field, and what they're wearing contrasts with the environment around them really well. It's pretty hard to see them. Real camouflage is very effective against an FPV drone. That's why they need spotters, or they need loitering drones or recon drones like Mavics that can go up higher, can stabilize, they have a little bit better footage to direct them to where they need to go, to actually like walk them in on a target or spot targets of opportunity. Now, if you're being chased by an FPV drone or any kind of analog drone, you can kind of use that to your advantage if you know what they're good and what they're bad at. Any sort of like massive hill or mountain or brush, even just like this, is going to create a lot of interference. Like their screen is going to be fuzzy, and really good pilots know how to navigate even when their screen goes out like that. But using the terrain to your advantage is a big deal. Now, this is also where we see these fiber optic drones coming out that just bypass all of that because they've got a direct feed back to the pilot, right? But by and large, analog drones, they have a tougher time getting through all this stuff. Now, on my radio, I can boost the signal. I can boost that signal, boost the power of it, and be able to kind of push through any sort of interference. But I think it's really smart when we talk about drone defense that it goes beyond the shotgun, that it goes into actually understanding what the tech can do and what a seasoned operator, which I am not, by the way, can do with that tech. But as far as loiter drones that can drop ammunition, that's where you're going to want to get underground, basically. So apart from digging a hole, well, good luck. Now, for more exposed areas, you can always bring in some netting. Just the cheap stuff works. Anything that can tangle up into the props of a drone is going to be effective.
Deswegen, das sieht man auch mittlerweile, diese Netze, also sogar mittlerweile haben sie sogar eine Überdachung, das war mal die erste Generation, mittlerweile sind die sogar schon überdacht, dass man so ja, Straßen decken kann, besonders zum Beispiel in Kursk hätte das sicher gut helfen können, wenn es halt langsam eng wird, dass du genau solche Netze aufstellst und die wichtigsten Logistikpunkte, wo die Drohnen ihre Reichweite haben, sie zu hindern, dass sie eure Logistik angreifen können.
Cheap netting. It absolutely works, and you can use that to block off areas that are a little bit more exposed. So let's bring it back down to reality, okay? How much of a priority should this be? How much of a priority should drone defense be? Right now in America, very, very low. Drone shotguns, even lower. Like honestly, a drone shotgun to me is the lowest priority of all my priorities on my priority list right now. That's a lot of priority. Just like we say in almost every single one of our videos, food, water, security, communications, community, that is 100 times way more important than any of this cool, fun stuff that we get to show and demonstrate on this channel. Now, our world could change. FPVs and weaponized FPV drones could become a real thing in our country at some point in the future. It's not impossible, but when it comes to that, maybe we should step away from talking about drone defense and actually talk about how much more of a priority it should be to be good with a drone, right? If I could be one of two guys, the guy with a shotgun to defend myself with from an FPV drone, or the FPV pilot, I'm going to choose the pilot every single day. And we've seen the comment a million.
Und ich muss sagen, ich habe jetzt auch ein paar Simulatoren probiert und ja, man lernt es relativ schnell, wenn man ein bisschen so ein räumliches Vorstellungsvermögen hat. Ich denke, Leute, ich habe ja ein bisschen eine Luftfahrtvorbildung, kann man so sagen. Die dritte Dimension verstehe ich gut, aber wenn man vielleicht das nicht lernt, braucht ein bisschen länger, aber ich denke, das ist sicher in spätestens 2 Monaten erreichbar, so einen Teil effektiv zu fliegen.
Million times on any of our content with like small unit tactics or sustainment stuff or thermal mitigation or night vision. This comment always pops up like, oh, well, that's useless because you'll just get hit with a drone. Or any long range content we do. Oh, well, drones are a thing, so this is irrelevant now. First of all, I very much disagree with that. I think that hard skills in terms of security and violence will always be relevant, regardless of what tech comes. But if that is the case, then why are those same people who make those comments not selling half of their arsenal and investing into drones and becoming very highly skilled with them? If that is the case, if drones are the future, then shouldn't we be spending as much time learning about them and learning how to pilot them and use them to our advantage as we do spending time on the flat range? Not to mention that drones are useful for a whole slew of different things. It doesn't have to be wartime, right? Drones are useful now. Number one, they're fun as heck. It's an amazing hobby. Number two, they're incredible recon tools. You can survey an area. You can go and check out what's ahead. They're invaluable in search and rescue operations. There's so many other uses for drones than just strapping a bomb to them. And so you can already be getting value out of it right now. Way more value than a drone shotgun. And they're a great source of income. Dead serious. We get messages a lot of times from younger guys who don't really know what to do with their life. I feel you. I was there. Well, if you can find something that you enjoy, like flying a drone, which is naturally enjoyable, it's just fun, you can learn how to make a living with that, whether you're doing videography or you're doing thermography or you're surveying fields or you're using drones to crop dust. I can't say crop dusting without laughing because that's what I do through the house, and it makes all the kids and the wife go into different rooms. So to wrap this all up, I want to leave you with one final thought. While FPV drones are not a threat to us as American citizens right now, you should know that our government is doing everything within their power to take control of the skies so that you have no control over it whatsoever. Now, from a security standpoint, that's great, but from a liberty standpoint, it sucks. And I think there is a balance to be had, but what we see on the horizon of civilian drone use is not good. We'll do a deep dive on that subject later, but with the DJI ban coming up, it's going to make easy mode drone use for civilians significantly more difficult and more expensive until US drone companies can step up their game. We see the drone situation in America as the same type of situation machine guns were in about 10 years before they were banned. They are an armament deployment method, and in a weird way, that is very related to the Second Amendment, because the Second Amendment is all about the people having the freedom to pursue the same warfighting tools as our government, and if we don't wake up, we may lose the skies forever. That being said, if you want more information about drones, if we've kind of like sparked that curiosity in you, number one, it is not that hard to get into. I am not great with this stuff, and even I can do some pretty cool things. The guys that I tend to get a lot of information from are guys like the Quad Tac dudes, Ascend ISR, and also Second Order Effects. I, in fact, just took an FPV crash course with them where we literally had 2 days to build and repair and learn how they all worked, and then fly them like crazy, wreck. If we broke something, we had the dudes who knew what they were doing to sit there and watch.
Also was kann man mal davon lernen? Das ist jetzt mal sicher ein interessanter Punkt. Ich denke, was wir sicher gut davon lernen können, ist, dass Gebüsche und Bäume FPV-Drohnen schwieriger zu operieren machen. FPV-Drohnen haben ihre Herrschaft in der Wiese, also alles, was auf offenem Gelände ist, da sind FPV-Drohnen verdammt effektiv, das kann man schon sagen. Aber sobald du in Büschen, urbanen Gebieten bist, hast du als Infanterist trotzdem noch eine Chance. Aber du merkst halt wirklich, was das alles heute wichtig geworden ist, diese ganzen Möglichkeiten, also diese Drohnen beherrschen einen Großteil des Schlachtfeldes mittlerweile, aber die sind noch keine allmächtige Waffe. Also sie ist sehr effektiv. Aber ja, Wälder werden meistens halt von Artillerie kleingestückt im Ukraine-Krieg, das sieht man oft. Deswegen können irgendwann die FPV-Drohnen trotzdem operieren dort. Aber sonst, man merkt halt, dass man einfach wirklich noch Chancen hat gegen FPV-Drohnen. Und das Zweite, was man noch da merkt, ist, dass die ganzen Schrotflinten-Thematik, glaube ich, eher für Verschiebung ist. Also langsam bin ich so sagen, gut, Schrotmunition, also echte Schrotflinten oder Schrotmunition bei Sturmgewehren, würde ich eher sagen, sogar Schrotmunition für Sturmgewehre, weil es erstens einfach ist, glaube ich, für die Logistik. Zweitens brauchst du es, glaube ich, eher, wenn du auf Verschiebung bist, genau auf offenem Gelände, dass du A nach B fährst, vielleicht im Fahrzeug und genau drauf sitzt. Da kann es natürlich nützlich sein, wenn du diese Munition dabei hast. Und du kannst halt genau dieses Anti-Drohnen-Magazin laden und hast mal eine Möglichkeit, da eine Salbe rauszuschießen und diese Drohne abzuschießen. Ich denke, das ist, was man daraus lernen kann. Ja, ich hoffe, es hat euch interessiert bis dahin. Jetzt schauen wir noch etwas, was genau Simple History geht. Es geht ja darum, um die Rekrutierung und wie es könnte aussehen im Dritten Weltkrieg, weil man Leute mobilisieren muss, falls die erfahrenen Soldaten ausgehen. Sagen wir es so. Und das schauen wir uns mal zusammen an. Aber ja, genau. Also jetzt sind wir fertig mit der Drohnenkriegsführung. Vorher waren wir noch bei der Schlacht um Kursk, die Analyse. Und jetzt haben wir die Drohnenkriegsführung. Und jetzt kommen wir noch zuletzt zu diesen Einberufungen. Und genau. Unterhaltet euch noch gerne dabei, was euch dabei interessiert. Und nehmt mich gerne Wunder.
Work. Conscription, in one form or another, has been utilized by nations to fill the ranks of their armed forces since way back in history, and though highly controversial, is a practice that continues to this very day. In the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia, both sides have utilized conscription to bolster their numbers. In Ukraine, laws were enacted to require all men aged 18 through 60 to register for conscription, though only those aged 27 to 60 were initially liable to be called up for service. service. In the face of recent losses, this age was lowered to 25 in early 2024. Women with medical training are also required to register, though there's no requirement to serve. But everyone with medical qualifications can expect to be called up to serve in a national emergency. On the opposing side, Russia has also resorted to conscription. In a law that went into effect on January 1st, 2024, all Russian men aged 18 to 30 are required to serve for a year in Russia's armed forces, an increase from the original age limit of 27. As of July 2024, about
Das ist ähnlich in der Schweiz. Da müssen wir auch von zwischen, sagen wir so, 18 theoretisch bis 33 müssen wir ein Jahr insgesamt in der Armee gedient haben.
150,000 men have been drafted in this way. According to Russian law, these men are not to be sent outside of Russia, therefore freeing up other professional units for frontline service, though there were some that were sent to Ukraine, allegedly by mistake. There are other reported violations of this policy, but these are difficult to confirm or debunk. These policies are controversial, to say the least, with both sides seeing a large exodus of men of military age leaving their countries. In Ukraine, a recent poll revealed that draft dodging was acceptable according to 46% of the respondents, and a quarter were unsure. In Russia, it's a felony to leave the country after being summoned for service. In spite of the unpopularity of the practice, both sides will no doubt continue to rely on conscription to fill their ranks until the end of the conflict. As mentioned earlier, conscription is nothing new, with forms of it originating back to ancient times, and it's been used for millennia by virtually every major world power ever since. During the First and Second World Wars, participating countries experienced severe numbers of casualties among their servicemen, which forced them to implement strict measures to fill their ranks. When there were not enough men willing to serve voluntarily, they resorted to conscription. After the World Wars were over, the desperate need for soldiers was gone, though many nations still turned to compulsory military service, and the lingering fear of the draft hangs over the heads of many to this day.
Oder es ist eigentlich immer einfacher, eine Wehrpflicht zu haben, wo halt schon aktiv ist, als eine Wehrpflicht wieder einzuführen, weil nach spätestens 18 Jahren hat das niemand mehr in Erinnerung und niemand will das machen.
Nations around the planet.
Wenn es halt in der Gesellschaft schon verankert ist, dann ist es halt normal.
Planet still require their citizens, usually men, to perform military service, whether they wish to or not. Around 85 countries have some form of compulsory service. In some cases, it's a response to the ever-looming threat of war, such as in South Korea, which requires all able-bodied men aged 18 to 36 to undergo military training as a defense against their northern neighbor. For other nations, it's a matter of national security, even when there's no specific threat. Switzerland has conscripted its male population since 1848 and continues to do so today, though they've not actually participated in a war in centuries. Surprisingly, this is actually a popular policy and a major source of Swiss pride and national identity. In 2013, a referendum to eliminate compulsory service failed with over 73% of the population in favor of keeping the system. After the Second World War, the United Kingdom continued the practice of conscription in order to ensure enough manpower for their military, which was needed in places like occupied Germany, the Middle East, and India. In 1947, Parliament passed the National Service Act. This required all physically able men between the ages of 17 and 21 to serve in the military for 18 months, though this could be deferred by university students and apprentices. After this service, they would be placed in the reserves for 4 years. In total, around 2 million men were conscripted this way until the new
Und das mit der Reserve ist auch ein bisschen eher eine Papiersache, weil theoretisch immer nach 6 Jahren hat noch eine Grundbildung. Natürlich musst du vielleicht auffrischen, du musst wieder Equipment. Es ist, glaube ich, eher eine Equipment-Sache mit Reservisten. Aber technisch kannst du jemand auch noch nach 20 Jahren wieder einziehen. Natürlich muss er wieder die ganzen Basics lernen, aber er hat trotzdem noch mehr Ahnung als der, wo noch nie eine Waffe in der Hand hat.
Law was repealed in 1960, though those with deferments still had to serve. The last national servicemen were discharged in 1963. Training lasted for 6 weeks, with emphasis placed on training the men as quickly as possible. Accommodations could vary, but were generally of a lower standard, and the pay for the conscripts was a fraction of what the average British man would earn in the era. For the most part, after training, these men were sent to garrisons around the world. These could be relatively peaceful sectors, such as Germany, but could also be in active war zones, such as Cyprus, the Malayan Emergency, and the Suez Canal crisis. In 1950, the North Koreans launched an invasion of their southern neighbors, and British troops were part of the UN force sent to intervene. As a result of Britain's involvement in the Korean War, the length of service was extended from 18 months to 2 years. In total, 395 British national servicemen were killed in action in various war zones throughout the world from 1947 to 1963, and many more injured. After the Second World War, the United States also maintained a system of conscription, commonly called the draft. The Selective Training and Service Act, which conscripted millions of men during the Second World War, was set to expire in 1947, though Congress, at the urging of Harry Truman, renewed the law in 1948. This was a temporary measure which would expire in 1950, though this was postponed due to the outbreak of the Korean War. 1.5 million men were drafted to fight in the conflict, with another 1.5 million sent to serve in occupation duties in Europe and Asia between 1954 and 1961. One of these men was perhaps the most famous entertainer in the world at the time, Elvis Presley, who served between 1958 and 1960, and was part of the 3rd Armored Division in West Germany. With their increasing involvement in Vietnam, the U.S. once again called upon the Selective Service system to ensure they had enough manpower to fight in the conflict. In an attempt to maintain some degree of equality, a lottery would be held, in which birth dates and numbers would be chosen at random, in full view of government officials, observers, and the media to ensure transparency. If a man's number was called, he would be drafted into the armed forces. There were some deferments due to status, such as being a university student, medical issues, or a family situation. Though it was as fair as possible, since the numbers were assigned by random chance, the draft was deeply unpopular, and anti-draft protests were the cornerstone of the ever-growing anti-war movement that gripped the nation as the war dragged on. By the end of America's involvement in the conflict, 17,671 draftees had been killed in the conflict, about 30% of the total number of losses. The draft was so unpopular and had such an effect on public consciousness that, in spite of the numerous conflicts the U.S. had engaged in since Vietnam, these were all fought by volunteers. In spite of maintaining an all-volunteer force, the U.S. still maintains the Selective Service system, requiring all men aged 18 to 26 to register for a draft, should the need arise. Though compulsory military service has been implemented in some form or another since ancient times, its practicality is
Ist auch ein bisschen der Ursprung von unseren modernen Armeen, auch diese Bewegung, kann man so sagen.
hotly debated. Those in favor
Aber der Punkt ist auch, sobald die Freiwilligen weg sind, dann wird halt nachher mit Gewalt mobilisiert.
of conscription believe that it not only provides necessary manpower in times of national emergency, but also fosters a sense of patriotism, duty, and purpose for those called up and instills much-needed discipline into a person's life. It's believed that the lessons learned in the military will carry over to civilian life, improving the long-term prospects of both the conscript and the nation as a whole, well after service ends. For those opposed, there's an argument that it is immoral to force someone to serve against their will, compelling them to risk their lives as well as grievous bodily harm and psychological trauma for a cause they do not believe in. There's also a practical concern. Those who are forced to fight against their will are obviously unmotivated and not committed to the cause. Their mindset, a potential liability in a combat zone. No one wants to share a foxhole with someone who is only there under duress. In the words of a Ukrainian soldier in the recent conflict, quote, "We still want people to join voluntarily because there's a big difference between someone who was drafted into the army and someone who went to defend their homeland. The desire to fight the enemy is very important, in addition to training, equipment,
Der Punkt ist, das ist auch ein, so, ich würde sagen, immer meistens, man sieht es in diesem Konflikt, dass man halt Wehrpflichtige meistens eher nimmt, um Stellungen zu verteidigen und wenn du halt angreifen musst, nimmst du eher die Freiwilligen. Dafür sind sie meistens in rückwärtigen Stellungen und sind immer für punktuelle Offensivaktionen da, weil immer Freiwilliges ist auch mehr motiviert, kriegt meistens auch die bessere Ausrüstung und dadurch hat er auch mehr eine Wahrscheinlichkeit zum Erfolg auf dem Schlachtfeld, so hart und brutal das klingt.
and preparedness," end quote. Draftees throughout history have served with distinction and bravery, and some have gone above and beyond the call of duty. In spite of this, calling up the unwilling to serve is a controversial practice. In the current unstable geopolitical climate, there are fears that wide-scale conflicts can break out, forcing nations to resort to conscription of their citizens. Whether this is an unfounded fear or a potential reality, what is certain is that fears of the draft will loom large in the minds of many around the world.
Da merkt man, wie es sich ein bisschen die Welt geändert hat und diese ganze Philosophie vom Krieg sich weiterentwickelt hat. Ja, ich hoffe, es war für euch sehr interessant, was wir da angeguckt haben. Lasst gerne ein Like und du bitte noch ein Abo da. Unten bitte abonnieren, das hilft mir extrem. Spreche dich gerne persönlich an dabei, weil genau du, wo hinter dem Bildschirm bist, du hilfst mir, diesen Kanal größer zu machen und uns diese Informationen zu beschaffen, wo wir brauchen, um überhaupt eine Chance zu haben. Weil der Punkt ist, wir Europäer haben etwas nicht mehr gehabt. Wir haben keine Kampferfahrung mehr. Andere Länder haben sie, wir haben sie eher beschränkt. Und deswegen bist du verantwortlich, dass du mich pusht, damit ich weiter gute Videos machen werde. Ich werde auch Interviews mit Leuten aus der Ukraine drehen, mit Veteranen und auch mit Leuten, wo gut trainierte Ausbilder sind. Ich werde uns so viel Informationen, wie ich nur kann, schaffen, damit wir hier eine zentrale Informationsplattform haben, wo uns hilft, falls wir eingezogen werden gegen unseren Willen oder mit unserem Willen, aber dass wir wirklich zumindest eine Grundahnung haben, uns zu verteidigen und auf dem modernen Schlachtfeld haben eine Chance zu überleben. Das sind genau die wichtigen Informationen, weil ich denke immer so, ich bin zwar gut trainiert, aber ich lerne auch täglich dazu. Und ich denke, falls mir was passieren sollte und jemand müsste meine Position ersetzen, wäre ich happy, wenn er schon mal wenigstens die Hälfte von meinem Wissen hat und dann nur noch das Training braucht, aber das Wissen schon hat, dann kann er ja schon viel effektiver sein als jemand, wo gar keine Ahnung hat. Und das will ich genau damit erreichen mit meinem Kanal. Weil ich denke, unsere Nationen werden uns bald brauchen, egal ob ihr dazu gut findet oder nicht. Abhauen empfehle ich euch vorher, weil nachher ist es zu spät. Ein deutscher Zollbeamter bestechst du nicht. Man holt dich und wenn man merkt, dass du abhauen, dann kannst du gerade dich damit gefasst machen. Entweder gehst ins Gefängnis, wenn du Glück hast. Wenn du nicht Glück hast, wirst du in irgendeine Front geschickt und wahrscheinlich dann nicht mal in so eine gemütliche Einheit. Deswegen abonniert meinen Kanal, unterstützt mich und als Abschluss lasse ich doch einmal mein Intro laufen, weil das ist ein bisschen so meine Grundphilosophie, warum wir verteidigungsfähig bleiben müssen und stark bleiben. Genau.
Let's set the record straight. There's no argument over the choice between peace and war. But there's only one guaranteed way you can have peace, and you can have it in the next second. Surrender. Admittedly, there's a risk in any course we follow other than this, but every lesson of history tells us that the greater risk lies in appeasement. And this is the specter our well-meaning liberal friends refuse to face, that their policy of accommodation is appeasement. And it gives no choice between peace and war, only between fight or surrender. If we continue to accommodate, continue to back and retreat, eventually we have to face the final demand, the ultimatum. And what then? Well, Nikita Khrushchev has told his people he knows what our answer will be. He has told them that we're retreating under the pressure of the Cold War, and someday, when the time comes to deliver the final ultimatum, our surrender will be voluntary, because by that time, we will have been weakened from within spiritually, morally and economically.
So, ab jetzt ist offiziell der Livestream beendet. Wir können uns gerne noch ein bisschen im Chat unterhalten. Ich lasse jetzt mal ein bisschen den Chat auch laufen. Da kann ich genau sehen, was da so ein bisschen abgeht. Jetzt kann ich auch mal den Live-Chat anschalten. Ja, da geht ja nicht viel mehr ab. Genau, ja, dann lasst eure Fragen noch da und ich lasse mal kurz die Abstimmung beenden. Genau, also 77% sagen ja und 22% haben nein gesagt, ob das interessant war oder nicht. Genau. Aber ich hoffe, ihr habt alle einen guten Tag gehabt bis dahin. Ich will euch noch was gerne zeigen. Warum meine Sorge ist, dass man nicht nur vielleicht im Osten Besorgnis schauen sollte, sondern auch im Westen. Wo war das Video? Ich habe das auch ganz kurz gesehen gehabt. Es gab so ein Rekrutierungsvideo von den Amerikanern. Wenn ich es gerade finde. Das ist mir gerade angezeigt, weil ich habe es jetzt sehr oft angeguckt. Ne, ist nicht mehr da. Ja gut, das wird dann am Mittwoch, am Donnerstag ich denke 20:30 Uhr, ich werde es wahrscheinlich auch in Zukunft so machen, werden wir jetzt dann das nächste Video angucken. Da wird es wieder ein bisschen um Techniken, Infanterie, Zwischentechniken gehen. Und am Samstag wieder Frontberichte, Frontaufnahmen, GoPro-Aufnahmen, dass wir das dann zusammen angucken. Weil das war jetzt, das gestern war einfach Nachholung vom Samstag, weil ich habe viel zu tun gehabt. Ja, und am Freitag kommt ein Video, also die 2 Interviews, wo ich geführt habe. Eins habt ihr schon, aber ich würde das noch ins neue Video auch integrieren, um da ein bisschen einen fließenden Übergang zu haben für diesen beiden Interviews und die ganzen Eindrücke von dieser Messe. Weil das sind halt schon einige interessante Aspekte und Lektionen, wo ich da gelernt habe. Besonders einige habe ich heute euch geteilt. Besonders mit diesen YouTube-Videos, mit den Shotgun-Drohnen, kann man fast sagen, wo halt dafür da sind, andere Drohnen abzuschießen. Weil das sicher auch eine wichtige Luftabwehrtechnik sein muss. Genau. Aber sonst, wenn da keine Fragen mehr kommen, würde ich sagen, wünsche ich euch gute Nacht. Dann sehen wir uns wieder am Donnerstag um 20:30 Uhr. Peace out. Abonniert Schattenstrategie. Hilf du mir bitte, stark zu werden in YouTube, dass wir weiter gute Informationen, wie wir überleben können, auf dem modernen Schlachtfeld zusammenhalten können.